We have no audio in the boardroom.
Sorry, Jenna, could you repeat what you just said?
I hear you now. We are live.
Great. We're going to wait for the team to join us. Good morning. I'm the Executive Director of the Public Design Commission, and welcome. If you're joining us via Zoom and would like to testify, please sign up through the Google form link and as well on the meeting agenda. And I will hand it over to Deborah, but we will give the team who's presenting a moment to enter. Take the consent agenda.
All right, you want to get going? Okay. Good morning. I'm Deborah Martin. I'm the chair of PDC. Welcome to the Public Design Commission meeting. Today's meeting is being held in person in City Hall. Members of the public can attend and give testimony either in person or remotely. The public meeting is now commencing with the consent agenda and items number 28630 through 28653. Please note items 28646 and 28647 have been withdrawn. Please note Commissioner Van Bramer's recusal from item 28649 through 28653. And actually Commissioner Van Bramer is present, but is not eligible to vote today. Are there any other recusals to note, commissioners? Okay. Let the record show there are no other recusals. I'll now call for the vote on the consent agenda. Commissioners, when I call your name, please state your vote for the consent agenda. Isabel Casilla.
Approved.
Lori Hawkinson.
Approved.
Bill Heinzen.
Approved.
Manuel Miranda.
Approved.
Susan Margenthaler.
Approved.
And I'll note that Commissioner Merrill Tisch is eligible to vote remotely as per PDC resolution. Commissioner Tisch.
I apologize for not being there in person and I approve.
And Mary Valverde, sorry. Approve. I also vote to approve all, so let the record show that all are in favor. The consent agenda is approved. Okay, we'll now continue with the public hearing portion of the meeting. The first item is 28654, the conceptual review of installation of an artwork by Serge Adequate Clotet at the Baisley Park Community Library in Jamaica, Queens. Per standard procedure, the applicants will give their presentation, then public testimony will be heard, and then the commission will ask questions, deliberate, and vote. We will hear in-person testimony first, followed by testimony from remote participants. We can now proceed with the presentation.
Good morning, commissioners. My name is Kendall Henry. I'm the Assistant Commissioner for Public Art at the Department of Cultural Affairs. And I'm going to give you a rundown as to where we are today with this particular project background. So the project was initiated in January of 2022, at which point we presented a number of presentations to the community board to tell them about the project and get input from them for panelists and artists as well. Our first panel was held in February of 2022, where we showed about 24 artists, including artists from the community. And at this panel, we selected 5 finalists. We usually select 4 finalists, but for this particular project, we incorporated a super local artist into this process because the community wanted that. The second panel, we saw a panel proposals from all 5 finalists, and at which point Serge Atukwe Clotet was selected unanimously. The panel was attended by a number of elected officials, as well as the community board and local board president's office. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Hannah Grossman, who will give the presentation, and Serge is available online for his community engagement component and questions. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.
I'm not sure. Do you want me to manage the slides or? Hi. Great, thank you so much. My name is Hannah Grossman. I work with Sergio Tupoy-Clati. I've been managing his public works projects, also general commissions that we do. I'm based in Los Angeles, but go between Los Angeles and Accra to work with him. We were very excited, obviously, to be selected for this project. Sure, we're here. My apologies. Sure. So Sergio Tupoy-Clati, who was born in 1985, is an artist living and working in Accra, Ghana. He works primarily in sculpture, photography, installation, and performance, and has received international acclaim and recognition for his radically unique revisioning of scrap materials, largely working with Kafur gallons, which are typically brought to Ghana, to the region, holding cooking oil and then reused to transport water. He typically binds, cuts, weaves, and shapes these works into reimagined objects, often, resembling a textile. They're incredibly large-scale installations, as you can see here, range anywhere from, public installations to interior installations and institutions. And there we go. I have just a few work samples for you to show kind of the scale of this work and how it's been exhibited over time. This obviously in France as a public works. This was at Kew Royal Botanical Gardens in London as part of their food festival that they have there, where we reproduced an ensemble where he performed within the community, did a number of community engagement-based projects, and then allowed for this to remain on-site installed in London. This is part of Desert X in Saudi Arabia, which was installed on the interface, obviously, in Alula. Here we have the Eden Project, also a community-based nonprofit in Cornwall, also a programmatic installation where he will be traveling at the end of this month to do workshops with children who visit this space. This is a work, Sea Never Dries. Part of the interesting thing about this work, because of the nature of the material, is that it is often sort of iterated and reused. This installation was initially installed in Ghana for his community, then went to Mumbai for a public arts festival, and then was exhibited at Basel in Switzerland. This actually is coming down shortly, but was included by Leslie Loco in the Venice Architecture Biennial as a public installation. This most recently is an installation that he did with Gallery 1957 in Labadi. I include this mostly as an index to explain what we're proposing for Baisley Park. So obviously, this is a very early rendering that we had applied with for many reasons in the process of the redesign, which we're very grateful to Levin Betts, for the incredible inspiration on the site. We've decided to actually do an interior installation of this work rather than an exterior for lots of reasons, for it to be more community friendly and easier to maintain. Obviously, the site located here. You can see some of the original images of the location, what it looks like now. Aerial view. This is the proposed redesign by Levin Betts, where we'll actually be installing in an interior space that is both visible from the inside of the space as well as from the street level. Landscaping. Here you can see outlined the location of the proposed installation. It is around a multi-purpose space. As mentioned, it'll be activated in the main part of the library as well as visible from the exterior. So the installation is obviously site-specific. It is utilizing this tapestry modality of making with the porcelain and copper wire. He refers to this body of work as Afro-Galanism. This is a practice that he has been engaging in for many, many years, at this point almost 2 decades. That it sort of brings into question material culture through utilization of yellow gallon containers used to transport cooking oil to Africa, as mentioned. He's assembling this work, similarly in collaboration with the community, as he does with most of his projects. And I want to speak a little bit about that. This is an initial rendering. I do want to emphasize that this is a composite. The work itself will be made ideally in collaboration with the local community, with QPL. We'd like to conduct workshops with Serge and children in the community that'll actually work to construct collaboratively images that'll then be rendered into this mural. So you can kind of see just the impact and the scale of this style of installation. This is also similarly a rendering that we've made. This is more of an example of what it'll ultimately look like, but you can see that the Kaffor gallon is being utilized. This entire mural is being made from this Kaffor gallon. Some of them do come in different colors. So what we've ultimately decided is to work with kids, you actually use this space to have Serge spend some time developing different designs and then having the studio actually produce designs that they make collaboratively together in a workshop. We've done various kinds of these workshops over the years. We've collaborated with the community in many different ways and are very happy to sort of employ some of that experience through this process. We also have a local partner in Ghana, the Foundation for Contemporary Art, who has been working with Serge in his practice for a very long time and is able to facilitate a sort of cross-cultural collaborative workshopping if we so desire to do so. But similarly, I really want to emphasize that, you know, ideally, a large part of this installation is going to be one that is programmatic. So we can see here, we'll collaborate with the community, partner with QPL and or local groups, creating part of the artwork and design with the community itself. We'll organize workshops. There are a few different ways that we propose doing this, and organize an event ideally to celebrate the unveiling of it, which we can do together in community. Here, sorry, I'm going to have him actually join at the end, but these are just some of the artwork details. So you can see what the material looks like up close. I've also brought in some samples that are actually located at Levin Betts now, but for the next phase of this design process, I'll make sure that you're all, you know, able to actually tactily experience the material as well. This is the front face of the material. So you can see, obviously, when it's constructed, there's a bit of wiring, but once it's actually installed, that's all in the back. And so this would be the part that would be facing the front. This is, you know, some of these portions of the work are actually behind it. In discussions with Levin Betts, we've talked about various installation techniques, modular, perforated installation. So not only is the work safe and with consideration for safety for who will be interacting with it, it'll also be modular so that in the case that there needs to be any repair at any point throughout, it can actually be done in a very low impact way. So here you can see also just some material samples, the front face, obviously, and the back. We have done these installations in spaces that are multi-use. We have also in process right now some material studies that are being done, but have worked very closely with health and safety teams to make sure that these can be installed and you know, engaged with. These are generally sort of just paletted colors of what these plastics are generally being produced in. And then regarding maintenance and conservation, the installation will be attached to the wall as mentioned, but it'll be modular. So we can actually take portions of the installation down if it does need to be repaired without having the entire space under construction. Generally speaking, we have at this point done many different kinds of installations of this kind, but we feel very confidently that in an interior space that is more climate controlled, we won't face some of the issues, which is initially why we had sort of changed the location of the proposed installation. And that is all that I have for the presentation. I'm happy to zoom Serge in now, if that would be helpful. You should, let me make sure. Thank you. Yeah, it says here that he's waiting to be added. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Yeah. No problem. I'm happy to, I mean, would it make sense to answer any questions in the meantime while we try to? Sure.
You go to questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer any questions in the meantime.
I'm not sure if it's within the detail of the installation description. What type of modulars, I guess, brackets does he usually work with? Is it vertical? Is it like squares? Is it?
Sure.
And, how, you know, will that sort of tactility of the wall behind it, like would that make it less permanent or more permanent, or like how does that?
Sure.
work? Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's a good question. Typically the installation, you know, we've only done a few permanent installations of this work. It can be installed directly onto the surface of the wall. The reason that we had been discussing the possibility of using a modular installation is largely so that if for any reason any section of the material needs to be repaired, there will be ideally some kind of substrate that is attached in a way that is very secure to the wall itself. The wall surface will be prepared, and then it can actually just sort of come down. It won't make it any less permanent, but just easier in the case that we do need to do any kind of amendments. The The modular design has typically been, it's mostly just having to do with the weight bearing nature of how it's installed. It's both on the vertical and horizontal. We secure the material at multiple points just to make sure that the way that the fabric actually hangs is really taut to the surface. We want to make sure that there's no buckling that happens. So ideally, and we're obviously in some of the early stages of talking about the technical design with Levin Betts about how they want to prepare the surface. But I think that what we've discussed is using something that is perhaps even perforated so that the wires even go behind that and then is mounted to the wall itself.
Do you have any light studies for how it will appear from the outside as well as the interior of the space lighting?
We do. I have, as of right now, I don't have as many technical studies. I have a lot of examples of this installation, this style of installation that have been done over the years in various environments. And I have long-term documentation of those installations. We're right now working with a conservation team to actually conduct material studies as well. So we'll be able to provide that to show kind of how the material ages over time and just sort of the chemical properties of how it changes.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure.
Question about the process, just so I want to make sure I'm clear on it.
Yeah.
So Serge will work with community members to create like the actual content. We understand the materiality and the
Yeah.
process, but the content will be created in collaboration with people in the community. Is that right?
Ideally, yeah, you know, when we had initiated this process, this work is made already kind of in community. He's working with a lot of studio systems and people from his local community to construct the artwork. The interesting and exciting thing of working with an artist of his age is that his practice is actively evolving. And so in the past few years, he started using much more color in these materials. I think that we felt really excited by the idea of being able to have something that is a bit more representational, potentially even figurative, make its way into this piece. In talking with the library and talking with the community, I think that a really important priority is to make sure that it feels like it is of the community. And so because we have experience working with children in the community for these types of works in general, we thought that it would be a really good way to sort of work together to come up with some of the designs. Obviously, Serge would be sort of constructing the overarching final design and he would be incorporating these pieces in, but in an ideal world, what we'd be doing is having workshops where some portions of the imagery was actually being made in collaboration with children who actually are utilizing this space, and then they'll be actually built into the larger image.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah,
That's
of
lovely.
course.
So then what we're seeing here in terms of what you just said about representational
Sure.
images, it could be something like that.
It could, yeah.
Yeah.
And here, I think maybe this is a more interesting slide. to-
Right,
to
right.
sit on.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, and this is actually just composited from individual works, and I just had our designer put this together so you could get a general sense of what this could look like. It can be anything from more figurative, where we also see some just objects, you know, potted plants and things like this. But I know that when we had really started having this conversation, Serge was particularly excited about working with kids to make sure that things that they felt were important, things that they wanted to see in the space that they were using, felt like they were also being considered when putting this design together.
Beautiful. So, Lori.
I think it's very exciting.
Yeah, thank you. We're also very excited.
At Powerhouse Arts.
Yeah,
Hi.
yeah,
So I'm thinking about the detail. I'm just looking forward to learning more about the detail when it hits the ground. and
Sure.
There's a baseball, you know, I'm an architect. So
sure, yeah.
You know, and I just think it's great to not have it covered with plastic, you know, and have you.
We
see-
like
you
that
have to
too.
See the material. I've seen it at the Biennale too, so you want to go up and see
Mhm.
closely how it's made. It's very important to understand.
Sure, and with consideration for that, I think that it'll obviously be you know, there's a vertical nature of the hang, but the reason that we're talking about the
Hanging,
substrate,
yeah.
it actually won't be hanging loosely. It'll be mounted to something that is mounted to the wall. So it'll be taut to the wall. There'll be a finite edge. It'll be made, you know, all of the edges and anything that is exposed will be smoothed. We'll make sure that nothing is sharp. And there will be really like a containment that happens on the edge, but it won't be concealed.
So then just one little detail, because this is.
Sure, no,
the way
please,
I
yeah.
think, sorry, but the people who clean.
Yes,
floor.
it'll be off the ground.
Yeah,
There's a
because
lift.
it's like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta lift it up. a little.
Yes,
Yeah.
and actually Levin Betts has been really helpful
I
with
bet.
this and are
I'm
thinking
sure
about
they-
this as
yeah,
well.
They're all over this.
Yeah, so they're making sure that there's actually, and the existing wall too also has a bit of a float. And so it'll allow for cleaning to be easy. Yeah, the space. Yeah.
It's very
Maintenance is
exciting.
important for us as well. Yeah.
And
I
I
under-
under Mary about the light. I'd love to know about the lighting.
Sure.
I understand the artist is having trouble joining.
I'm
But
so sorry about that.
that's okay. You've been very eloquent on answering our questions.
Sure.
So I think if the commissioners don't have more questions, we're going to see if there's anyone signed up to testify.
Jenna, has anyone signed up for remote testimony?
I don't see anyone signed up for remote testimony.
I do not see anybody in person, so there's no in-person testimony. Are there any additional members seeking to testify? If you wanted to raise your hand on Zoom, that is an option. We will give it a few minutes.
Number two, I also do have this embedded, he had pre-recorded a video for our
Great.
community meeting, which perhaps would
Yeah,
be-
and seeing there's no testimony, we can
Sure.
return to discussion briefly.
he's a bit more compelling than I am, I must admit, so it might be helpful to hear from him. Oh, sorry, Zinnia, maybe, I'm so sorry to do this. Is it in the PowerPoint? Okay, I'm not, it was like, if you want to pull it up on there, I'm very happy for it to play. The link should be embedded in the presentation itself, but if not, yeah, happy to answer any questions. And yeah, we look forward to scheduling, the community engagement aspect of this. We had a really informative meeting in the community meeting, and I think that it was very helpful to kind of hear what people's, concerns are and wanting to make sure that we are cognizant of those things and that, that his practice both stays, I think, true to the trajectory of how he's making this work, but also that it feels very relatable and that it feels accessible to the community as well.
We're not showing the video. Is that right?
I'm not sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Right.
sure. Yeah, of
I think
course.
that would be fine.
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Sorry about that.
No worries. So, commissioners, any last questions or comments? If not, okay, great. So that concludes testimony for the conceptual review of this artwork by Serge Tukwe Cloté at the Baisley Park Community Library. I think I can summarize by saying that all commissioners agree it's a beautiful work and a beautiful process for this will be an elegant way to root this library in its community. So I'll take a roll call vote on item 28654. Commissioners, when I call your name, please state your vote. Isabel Casilla,
Approve.
Lori Hawkinson,
Approved.
Bill Heinzen,
Approved.
Manuel Miranda,
Approved.
Susan Morgenthau,
Approve.
Merrill Tisch,
Yes, I approve.
Mary Valverde,
Approve.
and I also vote to approve. So let the record show all in favor, and the project is approved.
Finally joined. But if he wants to say hello,
Hi there, Serge. Can you hear us?
You should be unmuted now.
Serge, we can see you are online. If you wanted to say hello, you can come off of mute.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
We are having a tough day.
Congratulations on this beautiful piece. If you can hear. Okay.
Oh, you're unfrozen now. If you'd like to just say you're, yeah, no, he's muted. Yeah, it's okay. Congratulations, the project is approved, so we can move on to the next
Okay.
hearing item. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Serge. Now we're going to move on to the next item. The next item is 28655, the conceptual review of the installation of Brooklyn Museum of Love and Wonder by Vanessa German at the Shirley Chisholm Recreation Center. Per standard procedure, the applicants will give their presentation, then public testimony will be heard, and then the commission will ask questions, deliberate, and vote. We will hear in-person testimony first, followed by testimony from remote participants. We can now proceed with the presentation.
As we wait for Vanessa and the team to come in, I'm just going to give you a background again as to where we are with this project. This also started in 2022 and in March, where we again reached out to our community board, elected officials, and others to let them know that this project is happening. And we're going to be selecting an artist and looking for recommendations of panelists and artists. In May of 2022, we had our first artist selection panel where we showed about 21 artists and selected 4 finalists and 3 proposed, of which we selected Vanessa German. The panel comprised again of members from Community Board 17 and Council Member's Office from District 45. In this particular instance, we will be going to the Community Board officially tomorrow and on I think Wednesday or Thursday because of timing. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Vanessa to give her presentation.
Greetings all.
Welcome.
May this day find you well in your heart, in your body, and in your soul. Is this directional? Do I need to point it in a certain way for the clicker to actually? Grazie. This is me. I'm Vanessa. This is me when I was a little kid. Clearly, that's not me now, but headshots, you know. I am a self-taught artist. I feel like that's important for you to know. And by self-taught, you should understand I'm the daughter of the fiber artist, Sandra German, who passed away 8 years ago, but that was my mom. And my work really centers as a citizen artist around one, inhabiting my entire citizenship in my humanity through the creative engines of love and art. I believe in the power of love. I believe in the power of love, and I don't actually separate those things. So when we talk about this project, we're understanding that love is the crucial engine, and the entire process of the project is engaged through this lens. So every aspect of it. And I'm making sculpture, I'm working with photography, and I am working intimately in community and also through scale in community. These are some of the, y'all see, you can read. Does anybody have any questions about me or my background before we move forward? What's up? You look like you have a question on your face.
I'm good right now. You're from Philly?
I'm not from Philly. I grew up in Los Angeles, moved to a place called Loveland in Ohio, and then lived in Pittsburgh for a few years. Right now I live in a cabin halfway up a mountain in the Blue Ridge Mountains in Appalachia. I flew here yesterday.
Sounds nice.
Some of my work. So I'm making work that is inspired by, well, or sort of lives in the realm of the truth that art has something to do. Every work of art, I'm always asking myself, what should we put in the world and what do we want the work to do? So this is from my show last year at Casman, which is the gallery that represents me. This is a piece called Sad Rapper and a piece called TV Man. All of these bundles that you see on here are each individual prayers. I invite the public through my social media to send me words, names, or any center of heart, grace, prayer that they would like me to include in any specific artwork. So there's sort of the purpose and the power in the work is often crowdsourced. This is a look at the show in the gallery. So I'm thinking about even the objects as being in community and being in relationship to one another. I no longer make single discrete works of art. I make entire communities of art. I do believe what Thich Nhat Hanh said, that the next great revolutionary leader will not be a single individual, but will be an entire community of human beings. And I'm also working in deep connection with nature. I see in my humanity and the humanity of everyone around me that we are whole and that we have been whole the whole time. And I'm accessing in the making of art our human technology, which has a fueling engine in nature. So a lot of times I'm pulling in materials. These bottles came from the dump where the Biltmore, which was the largest house in the world, the actual dump of the Biltmore. So really what you're seeing here is that everyone's voice matters. We matter in relationship to the earth, and materials can be found anywhere. So I'm using found objects in my work, but I'm also considering the heart and conversation and where the purpose of the work comes from to actually be a material. I am using love as a actual material in the work. This is the space that I have in Pittsburgh. It's the art house. The way that it works is whenever the front door is open, anyone can walk in. The space is filled with books and art materials, and it's on a street corner where, unfortunately, part of the reason why I'm not there is because I've witnessed so many murders, and the PTSD, the doctor said that you just can't do this anymore. But the space is still there, and it is actually going to be expanding. This is a piece of my work that just travels around the world all the time. It's called Black Girl on a Skateboard. And so one of the things that's wonderful about this is when I was a little kid, people used to always tell me what Black girls could do and couldn't do. And one of the things was Black girls don't ride skateboards. And so this is a way that, so thinking about this project, and as I talk about going into residency, in the intimacy of conversation, how artworks can be born, how they can come into the world from somebody saying, this is a place where somebody told me I lacked, where I wasn't whole, and we can make through material, through this conversation, an actual realization of a transformed world where whatever somebody told you that you are not, or whatever, we can move it through the artwork. So working also in dimension as wall works, which is something that is important to hold inside of you as we look at the residency, is that we're working with different materials for the wall that are also acquired through a community process. So just holding that space. Also, I'm believing, so when I say I believe in the power of art and I believe in the power of love, I literally stand here physically today because art saved my life. And I'm sure I'm not the only person in the room who has this story. So one of the things I do is a work called the Blue Walk, which happens around the country in different communities where community members can say, these are the things that we're concerned about. This is where we are seeking release from grief, from pain, from stress. And then we'll create this ritual and walk it through a community in a route that is determined by the people in the community. This is a work that I recently had at the National Mall. And now, oh, we're here. Okay, y'all ready? Let's do it. So is somebody else talking about this, or I just show this for people to see? Because this is the Brooklyn. This is here. Okay. Oh, look, we're closer. We're getting closer in. Closer. Closer. Outside, there shall be a park, a place where people can be human and touch nature and meet each other, have a little meet cute. There. Okay. So you all have this. Shirley Chisholm. Listen, y'all. If you want to know if you got bravery in your heart and your soul, you go to that video of Shirley Chisholm after that man tried to stab her, right? And when you hear her say how she knows who she is in her life and in her body and what's possible for her to do with her humanity, whew, that lets you know that you're strong enough, that you got the goods just by being who you are right where you are. So it's an honor. It is an incredible honor to my being and to the being of my people that I get to present this project to you all in the name and in relationship to the great Shirley Chisholm. So the Brooklyn Museum of Love and Wonder that's the project that I'm proposing, that we're talking about. And thinking about one, what it took for Shirley Chisholm to hold herself together and the people who loved her, who she also poured love forward into, holding this in the space of a recreation center where people will go to play and, move their bodies around. I'm also thinking about this space, every single floor of this space being awake and alive and present in the vitality of love and wonder. Defining love as creative, understanding, redemptive, transformative goodwill, and wonder as the awakening moment of curiosity and willingness to see past the self and into the mystery beyond. Every floor of this building activated in the space of love and wonder, and also recognizing how stressed we are as human beings. So we go and we can relieve some of that stress through moving our bodies at a recreation center, but also we get a chance to have recreation of the heart and recreation for the soul. And this museum will exist in custom cabinets throughout the entire recreation center. There will be sculptures, there will be wall works, there will be quilts. We will make an art book of this entire museum. We will, of course, fabricate work specifically for spaces in these cabinets. And what I'm thinking about is people coming to do their basketball pickup game and needing to walk by that one work of art that was created by their child and another child about the woman who makes the bread on the corner. And I said what we will do is meet each of these moments with the material that is appropriate for them in this space, and that you could walk around and there you might have a cabinet at the height that only a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a really tiny person can access. And so sometimes there'll be cabinets in different spaces and different locations, but really exciting the entire building with the sense of love and wonder and making it a place of recreation for the inside of the inside of the inside of ourselves. The entire museum will be co-created. It will be dreamt through the community, and it will be a place where we are engaging our imaginations and our hearts. So I'm thinking about the way that when my mother would drop us off at the museum when I was a kid in Los Angeles, everybody at the museum looked out for us. Like I never felt like I didn't belong. And so I'm thinking about this space as a space of radical, empathetic belonging. And people know that they belong and they know that it is their space because they are also the creators of the art there. So who is co-creating in this museum? Everyone. I will be a citizen artist in residence in this community, and citizen artists in residence will begin in the soft places with me, most likely renting an Airbnb. Because we'll go through places where there are formal residencies, where I'm at Bed-Stuy Arts, where I am their artist in residence, but really the residency exists in the soft places first. I get an Airbnb. We make custom cards that say, we are making a museum of love and wonder in your community. I go get a sandwich and I say, here, I'm the artist that is co-creating with you a museum of love and wonder in your community. What's your favorite place to read books here? Or who makes the best pizza? And through that, I will be guided by people in the community to the places where they experience love and wonder in their neighborhood. And it could be their mother. It could be their grandmother. And we will follow the soft lines into the stories, into the dreams, into the places where people feel and are experiencing and creating the most vitality, and where they're experiencing that in their own neighborhood. So this is, VFW bingo. This is the library. This is senior citizen centers. And then from the soft places, rising up from the sidewalk level, we have the opportunity to say, for different institutions and organizations, would you like us to do a workshop here? Like, this is a relationship that we're building and growing on because it's love. So it is relationship based. We're not coming into this community to be transactional with these people. We've had enough of that in our lives and in our worlds. So this is the entrance to the recreation center. And what we have is spaces in the building where the entire wall is a custom cabinet that is transparent from both sides with a very specialized glass that limits the UV contact to any of the objects inside of the cabinet. So you'll see cabinets that are fully transparent windows into spaces. So the art is experienced from as many different perspectives as it can be. Now, what I want you to understand also is that sometimes within the cabinet, certain objects, depending on their materiality, will have a specialized conservation case that will go over them. So they have complete UV and dust and light protection on them. So there's some works that we will make, that I will make based on whatever happens in sort of intimate connection and relationship. And there's some things that we will, of course, have to send out to a fabricator, which you will see some of those in a moment, looking at different spaces and different cabinets. So this is the kind of cabinet that has a back to it. It's not transparent through and through, showing you scale and protection. So all throughout every floor of the building. And there will be parts of the Brooklyn Museum of Love and Wonder that do exist in the park, in front, and on the roof. We'll get to those when we get to those. So this building is made of love. One of the first things that we'll do is, with our printed cards that we take to the community, we'll actually print a postcard that gives people the opportunity to write a letter to this actual space that is being created. So this is, could you write a love letter to the future of the Shirley Chisholm Recreation Center? What do you want to see here? Who do you want to be here? How do you imagine this place contributing to your community? We take those letters, we digitize them, but the physical letters we will actually put into a container and plant within the landscape of the building. So they'll exist on the ground. And I don't know yet if we're going to put a marker where the letters are. I don't feel like we need to do that. I feel like we just need to put them in the soil of the soul of the building, and we will document all of those. So we invite the community to say, 10 years down the line, what has this community center already meant to you? So we invite people to dream into the future of the thing, which we know from the MRI studies about imagination and the brain, what happens when we invite people to imagine the future for themselves, right? We know that it's impacting their nervous system. We know that it's lowering their blood pressure. We know that this process of creativity is literally medicinal, right? We know that this also happens when we gaze upon art, that something is happening to us, and that happening is wellness, and we call that wellness also. We call that love. So this is me sitting at a farmer's market in Arkansas, y'all. And having conversation. And so this is what this could look like in the community, whether I'm at a farmer's market or I just set up 2 chairs on a street corner, right? Eye contact is happening, conversation is happening, and story is happening. We know that the universe is made of stories, right? And so from an intimate, informal scale to a more formal scale. So here are some spaces, some residency locations and activations. This is an installation I have called Miracles and Glory Abound, and it is actually the fiction of a city park. This is a sculptural incarnation of Let's Washington crossing the Delaware as a reimagined monument in a city park. So there are spaces where I already have, so I'm already scheduled to be here. I'm already scheduled to be at the Free Black Women's Library, which are in Brooklyn, but not necessarily in close proximity to the neighborhood. I am going to live in the neighborhood. And so we're moving up from informal residencies to formal residency through relationship and through proximity. Woohoo! All right, co-creating. So in co-creation, one of the things that we will do, depending on the space, is invite people from the community to give us materials. These are a pair of work boots that worked a steel mill for a long time from somebody's father. They gave me the boots. They told me the story about the man who went to work. They told me the story about the horrors of something called spoiled heat in a steel mill. And from this work, I used glass beads and square cut nails from a house that was gently demolished in Pittsburgh and made a work of art that is a power figure to protect laborers. And in the museum, part of that story exists in the case with the actual work of art. So it's not just the object, but the story moves forward also. These are simple ways that I'm able to bring in the voice of the community in a way that that tells a story. It makes like a impact to the heart, to the soul through this place of wonder. My favorite, and this came from a project that I did with Mount Holyoke College Art Museum, where we left prompts throughout the entire community. And we allowed anyone, you could be the person who fixed the elevator, you could be the dean of all the deans, but everyone contributed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of words and objects and stories that became an entire museum that we did for Mount Holyoke. So also looking at the way we're transforming ordinary objects, and depending on the materiality of some of these objects, they would be inside of the cabinet within another conservation case. Serena Williams on the cover turned into a Black Madonna from the cover of Vogue magazine. And this silver spoons given from each member of a family in a community. Documenting all of this, keeping all the data. This is an image of some of the artwork that will live outside in the park of the Shirley Chisholm Rec Center. And we call these the elders benches. So we will, in residency with senior citizen centers or specific other places that are engaging with elders in the community, do a hand tracing of the hands of the people, and they will become a bench called the elders benches. And so what we have here is you being supported by the elders in your community. Is the poetry too much for y'all? Is it too obvious? Is it like, of course, they sitting on a bench of the elders' hands, the elders got their back, right? You knew. Okay, thanks. You knew. So the elders got your back, y'all. Oh, look how sad it looks without art, but it's also beautiful. So we're showing spaces throughout the building where wall cabinets will be, elevations. Oh, and so I think about art as surprise. And so some of the sections of lockers, one locker will be removed and it will be a cabinet. And this is on, both of those are on the cellar level. The cellar level and a full single object case will do one power figure to the power of. It will come from the community, the power of this, but each individual prayer will be made by community members and will be a part of a single power figure. More spaces. We're doing a child's spirit house on the roof in the outdoor play area, which will be at the scale that children can enter into. There's only two sides to it, so there's no, you can't get trapped in there. It's just a throughway tunnel, and the design of it will come from drawings that the children make that will be powder coated onto the spirit house. I'm thinking about the spirit house as a house for dreaming, a place to be inspired, a place to be held in contemplation, curiosity, and wonder. This is some conservation and care information. We are focusing the making of the museum with materials that are deeply, deeply sustainable for reach into the future. Boop, boop. Some more information about the materials that we will work with. Does anybody have any questions about this? How does that work? Because it's a lot of information just take in and somebody to click through very quickly.
Once you finish, we can collect.
Oh,
all
is
the
that
slides
gonna
and
happen?
have
I
a
see you
discussion.
got your
Yes,
mic
of
out.
course.
I see you. Oh, wait, this is the end. This is an image. So check this out. So this is an image of the art house after the Pulse nightclub massacre, where institutions and like faith-based institutions of the community were saying, you cannot gather here. Do not come to us to have your vigil. And I said, oh, we just come to the lot of the art house. And so many people came. And this is an image from the newspaper. I didn't realize it was like the largest group hug I had ever been in. So I'm thinking about the spaces that we need to gather for community in the future, and to have spaces that we know have been built up and centered through the engine of love, as the Shirley Chisholm Recreation Center will be. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm ready.
Thank you so much. We will.
What's your name?
Shriyoshi.
Hi, Shriyoshi.
Incredible, your presentation. Thank you. We will first take a moment and see if there's any public testimony. There's no one here in person. If there are, please raise your hand. Jenna, do we have anyone signed up for remote testimony?
Hi, we do not.
Okay, so given there is no testimony, we will now ask questions. I'm going to hand it over to Deborah.
Vanessa.
Hi, Deborah.
Hi, Vanessa.
How are
Nice to
you?
meet you.
Nice to meet you also.
Actually, I'm even better than I was when I first got here after hearing your.
Listen, that's what I'm talking about. If it's real, yes. May that feeling be with you and carry you
Thank
through
you.
your day.
Yeah, no,
Yes.
and like a centering love as the kind of core of what you're doing is very beautiful, and you are able to show it through the manifestation of it in the built things and the design things. It's beautiful. So I'm going to open this up for my fellow commissioners. Any questions, comments?
My fellow commissioners.
Hi. I just
Hi,
wanted
greetings,
to-
Mary.
Yes, I wanted to congratulate you. I think the project is really well thought out and inspirational, and I am here for it. I'm excited. I've seen your work. I'm a fan. So I'm excited about the project happening, and it's I appreciate the work that you're doing to establish relationships with the community and intergenerational community, as well as local community and vendors. So I think that that's an excellent way to access what the community really is. I love your layout of the particulars in terms of putting them laid in the shelf, within the walls, et cetera. I was wondering if you had considered working with the architect, or maybe it could be part of your work to have a way to pathfind and maybe consider what the language of the font or design that's something I think that would
We
enhance the
haven't
work.
done pathfinding. We haven't done any like zooming into the details of text or language because we've done all the other things.
No,
That's why.
I
But
know that's a
thank you
long
so much for letting us
process.
know that it is an important detail for us to hold as how we invite people in to this. Thank you.
Yeah, I just think that because your pieces themselves are so strong and powerful and a collective project, I think that would be a really good way to synthesize the entire project as a building project as well, so that people can sort of want to follow through and look at and find all these places within the structure. So I think that would be very helpful.
So do you think that just initially, very quickly, that there should be a map of the museum within the building that exists spatially in there?
I think that it
And
would be
we can think
helpful.
about it too.
I think that it would be beneficial to the project as a whole, because each individual piece is a story on its own. It's on story
Yes.
itself. So I think
Yeah,
that
I
in
see
order
that.
for people to understand the whole thing as a collective project, it would be
Yes.
useful to consider that, or have that be something that you will try to synthesize once all of the pieces are made,
Yes.
so that you can sort of figure out a
Yes.
throughway or a language that threads all of them together. So perhaps that would mean
Mm.
a plaque somewhere that has little asterisks that you can find them, like a small map, or I'm not sure, but I think it's something that you can consider.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I really like the idea of
Thank you.
the kind of not imaginary, but a place for imagination.
Yes.
Institution of an institution. And so I
Did you
think
say an institution of an institution?
institution within an institution? So this idea of like the Brooklyn Museum of Love and Wonder, that is being a kind of, like an idea that's represented in some way, like, through the manifesto, you're framing already.
Yes, yes.
That could become a language too, but, I'd like it to be kind of, as kind of questioning as, your work is also, like, it doesn't have to be a fixed like brand or identity.
Mhm.
It could be something that's also flexible and participatory. So I
Mm.
think that part is really nice too. But I think so it could be as conventional as like, here's a directory map.
Right.
Here's.
But it doesn't, yeah,
But it
I
doesn't have to
appreciate
be
that. It doesn't have to be. That's exciting to ideate around.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I really love the Black Skater too. That piece.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you know Beatrice Demond. She's like a Black.
Did you say Beatrice?
Beatrice Demond,
And she's a
Black female skater.
Yeah, she follows me because of that piece. Because of that sculpture. I guess people were tagging her and I was like, all right, this is cool. But that piece travels with Art Bridges. And so it gets seen by so many children, so I'm always seeing it on Instagram with kids like, thanks.
Bill?
Is Jimmy on?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that we did provide you some feedback. Some of us in groups looked at this earlier, including me, and I appreciate how you're reflecting back the feedback, a commitment to live within the community, thinking about branding and design, and you've like laid out all the different types of community outreach that you're envisioning, and the types and the locations. And I think I just want to say I appreciate that you have heard that and are responding to that.
Mm-hmm.
There was one view, and that two members who expressed it, I think, are not here, so I just want to speak for them, unless one of them is on and wants to jump in. There was a suggestion that Congresswoman Chisholm, who is sort of throughout the building, that there be some type of incorporation or references to her in the imagery and the art. Just wondered if you could address that.
So there was a point in this project where we were told that there is it a monument to Shirley Chisholm that is being created, and to not think about this as like Shirley Chisholm centered artwork. Is her family still here? So do you know where the estate is, okay, I'm gonna do some research, Bill. And because I feel like in relationship to this project, what I can see being that living bridge is to actually speak to her family members and to talk to them about her spaces of love and wonder and her spaces of magic within that community, to actually make a work as though it is Shirley Chisholm's voice that we are co-creating with and speaking through. How do you feel about that? Like, that feels good to me.
That feels great. I appreciate that. If her family is not available or accessible, I'm sure there's still many people who worked with her in the various movements that she was in or staffed her, et cetera.
Thank you.
Hiroshi, can I say a few words?
Oh, it's hard to not see somebody's face.
There he is. We can see you
I'm
now.
there. Can you see me?
Yes.
Yes.
Well, first of all, Vanessa, very nice to meet you. My name is Jimmy. And I never felt more envy to be in that room than during this presentation, because I am sitting in Luquillo, Puerto Rico. And I want you to know that I felt the energy and the passion and the love all the way here through the miracle of modern technology. And I was wondering, boy, it must feel electric in that room throughout this presentation. So just incredible. And I was part of that initial group along with Ken, Seth, and Bill. And I have to say, after witnessing your presentation and the response to some of these questions, it has answered so much in terms of the community engagement and even the Shirley Chisholm reference, particularly the direction away from a specific perhaps tribute to Shirley Chisholm in this piece, in this project. But I just wanted to say I'm blown away all the way here in Puerto Rico by the energy, the passion, the love, and I want you to know that I'm excited too, and it's just incredible. So rarely have I felt so moved by a presentation, particularly on Zoom, which I hate, and it's just been incredible. So thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy.
Commissioners, any other comments before I summarize? Okay. So Vanessa, first of all, just thank you for that presentation that I can't add to what Jim just said. So thank you. And I want to note that you really addressed some of the commissioners' concerns around like how, to the extent to which this was a co-creation with the community. I think we're all feel like very comfortable and happy that that's what it is. There was some comments around wayfinding, that might be a way of inviting folks in to experience it, and and to tell the story that the project's an expression of like a collective vision. So we leave that to you to consider.
Thank you.
And then finally, the question of like, as you raised research into Shirley Chisholm, does she have descendants? Who are her friends? Like, who could speak for her now?
Yes.
We know you'll also be wondering about that and looking at that. So, commissioners, I will now take a roll call vote on item 28655. When I call your name, please state your vote. Isabel Casilla.
Approve.
Lori Hawkinson.
Approved.
Bill Heinzen.
Approved.
Manuel Miranda.
Approve.
Susan Morgenthau.
Approved.
Meryl Tisch.
Approved.
Mary Valverde.
Approved.
And I also approve. So congratulations.
Thank you, Deborah. Thank you, Mary. Thank you, Isabel. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Susan. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next public hearing item is 28656 and 28657. This is a combined presentation for the preliminary review of the construction of ADA paths and adjacent site work at Delacorte Theater at Central Park West and West 81st Street, as well as at Great Hill at Central Park West between 103rd and West 107th Street. Per standard procedure, applicants will give their presentation, then public testimony will be heard, and then the commission will ask questions, deliberate, and vote. We will hear in-person testimony first, followed by testimony from remote participants. We can now proceed with the presentation.
Team is coming in. We'll be starting.
Want to put your stuff down?
Diane's.
Do you want me to do the lapel? Happy to do a mic. Can see if it'll fit in my pocket. Yes. Maybe that'll work.
How are you doing?
Hi, how are you?
Good. Are you all ready?
I am, yes,
Okay.
just looking for,
Please, introduce yourself
Of
and then
course.
go plunge right in.
okay, hopefully I do this right. I apologize in advance, I have a cough. So please excuse me. My name is Diane Jackier. I'm the Vice President for Program Management at the Central Park Conservancy. It is very nice to be here. I'm here with my colleague, Nick Coster, who's our Vice President for Design. We're going to be presenting two projects. The first is the Delacorte Public Restroom and Accessibility Site Improvements, and then we'll go into Great Hill right after this one. So just quickly, I'm going to go through the project goals, the location, a bit of history for the projects. Nick will give you more of the details. So both of these projects have both building and site work components to them. The Landmarks Preservation Commission is reviewing the building components and the binding capacity, but we are also going to be showing you some of those elements today. So just for the project goals for the Delacorte Public Restroom, we're going to be restoring the building's exterior consistent with the historic design. We're going to be restoring the windows and doors, roof, some of the historic elements like lampposts, other features that have been removed over the years. We're going to be upgrading the MEP systems to reduce our carbon footprint, improving the restroom accessibility to meet jurisdictional requirements and best practices, and also maximize the fixture count in the women's room. So Nick will show you we're doubling that, which a lot of people are very happy since they know the long lines at the Delacorte Theater during the seasons. For the site improvements, we're going to be creating multiple accessible routes to the theater and public restroom facility from the West Drive and West 81st Street Park entrance, and also improve the accessibility to some adjacent park locations as well. So for some of you, you may know where the Delacorte Public Restroom is. It is sort of mid-park, just southwest of the Great Lawn. One thing I did want to mention and forgot to mention previously is that our restroom and site work project is going to coincide with the larger public theaters theater project, which just started construction last month. So the goal is for both of our projects to be completed for the spring, summer 2025 season. And we have been working closely with the architects for the public theater. They are also the architects for the public restroom here as well, which is Ennead. And we've also been working with Lee Saltzman. So just to give you a little bit of history, the Delacorte restroom was built around 1910. It was built just to the west of the old receiving reservoir, which is outlined in the old receiving reservoir is on the left, and then the public restroom is outlined in red right there. And you can actually see, I don't know if there's a pointer here somewhere, I'm afraid to touch a button, but you can see the wall of the receiving reservoir right there. Oh, thank you, sorry. Oh gosh, yes, so there's the wall of the receiving reservoir right there. So in 1934, the receiving reservoir was demolished, which is the picture on the left. And you can actually see this is the rear of the public restroom. Right here, you can see the ribbon of windows, which we're going to be restoring. And then in 1936, after the Great Lawn was built and what was called Belvedere Lake, now known as Turtle Pond, some of you may be more familiar with its current name, the public restroom is right there. And this is just another close-up of the building after the Great Lawn was built. And then here is just a photograph, just a sketch from when the public theater was being designed. It was designed to be nestled between Turtle Pond, the Great Lawn, and the public restroom here. So the theater was built in 1962. I'm now going to turn it over to Nick to go through some of the project details.
Great, thank you, Diane. So I'm going to first walk through the existing conditions. We're excited about this project because it's going to be bringing accessibility to a lot of the different programs in the park. So we're doing path work all the way out to Central Park West, which will provide an accessible route to the Swedish Cottage, the Delacorte Restroom, Delacorte Theater, as well as the Great Lawn. Just to quickly walk you through some of the existing conditions. These are the two path typologies. We have one that goes through the Shakespeare Garden. And the rest are fairly typical Central Park conditions where we have an asphalt path, an edge condition, and lawn and mature trees. The paths are all in a various state of repair. So most of them need regrading work in order to become compliant, as well as we're using the opportunity to reset any of the curbing details. And now the restroom itself. So you've seen sort of the history of this. It hasn't been updated in quite some time. So we're really excited that all these projects are also aligning to work together on a similar time frame. So in terms of the work, the dark gray is representing the areas that we will be removing and regrading, or in some cases will just be doing a mill and pave. The areas that are greater than 5% are located or are outlined in orange. And I can clarify that I know we did receive a question. This upper portion, basically from the dot up, is the area that's inaccessible. This lower section here is between 3 and 5%. So we'll be extending it out. The paths that will be accessible are all marked in blue. One point of note is that the most direct path to the Great Lawn, as well as the theater and the restroom, is remaining with some minor regrading, largely remaining as is. And that's due to the loading for both the Delacorte Theater as well as the Great Lawn. It's the widest of the paths, so the big box trucks all use this route. So that was something that we needed to maintain, as well as it's quite steep. In terms of the ramps that we'll be creating, this is a detail that we've used in Central Park quite a bit. This is at 86th Street. So asphalt ramps with brick landings, as well as steel handrails. Some typical sections of how we're addressing this. So vertical granite block curbs, asphalt on concrete with the handrails. The path going up from the Shakespeare Cottage to the Delacorte restroom, this one's requiring the most amount of regrading to make it compliant. And we've had similar conditions like this that we've done on previous projects in the park as well. Zooming in to the area around the restroom, we'll be restoring the planting beds in and around the restroom. These areas will all be receiving new planting. We've been working very closely with the team at the Delacorte Theater to coordinate the site interfaces. And we'll be restoring the planting in kind in the Shakespeare Garden in the areas of disturbance down towards the Swedish Cottage. In terms of lighting, we're just going to be refurbishing or resetting any of the existing B poles. And as Diane mentioned, there are 4 lights that were removed at some point in time that will be replaced on the exterior of the restroom. Quickly, just some images of the facade restoration. You can see below here, this number 7, these are the lights that will be added and replaced. We'll also be removing the door going into, it's currently a service door that we'll be just using the door on the other side of the building. So this is restoring it back to its historic condition when it was built. Here, just the entries into both the men's and women's room. The materials palette for the site, fairly typical for the park: asphalt, granite block, used in a variety of locations, rustic wood fencing within the Shakespeare Garden, and in a variety of both the New York City Park standard pipe rail, as well as the handrails that we use on the accessible paths. And for the material palette of the building, these were just going to be restoring and replacing anything that's damaged. So any of the missing architectural elements, those will all be replaced, similar to the lights that we'll be recreating on the exterior. And in terms of the planting palette, the understory shrubs and ground covers, these will be used in the areas in and around the theater. And this is a selection of the replace in kind palette for the Shakespeare Garden. That's it.
Thank you. Shioshi, do we have any public testimony?
We do not have any in-person testimony. Do we have any remote testimony, Jenna?
There is no remote testimony unless anyone in the Zoom room would like to testify. If so, please raise your hand.
Hearing none, I will hand it over to Commissioner.
Thanks.
Commissioners, comments, questions?
I have a couple of questions.
Please.
The first one, just with the planting palette, since the slide is here. A lot of these plants are suited for very heavy shade, but I see you have a couple that are for a lot of sun. Can you point to us on the plan, what are the different sun and light conditions? Since you mentioned you're replacing in kind, right?
So for the replacing in kind will be here at the Shakespeare Garden. This area here is partial sun throughout the day. This area does get some sun. We're showing the canopy sort of to their extent. So in the summer, you're getting sun in this area. And then at here at the restroom itself, this is much more of a shade area.
Got it. Okay. Okay, that helps answer that question. If you can say that other slide with the path, one of my primary questions on the preliminary review was just to understand how you are addressing the grade issues. So you mentioned here that basically there's a portion of the path, if I understood correctly, is steeper. So you're just regrading it throughout the length to make it less.
First, about just under 200 feet. So the first 90 feet is at about 10%. And so down here, the existing conditions are, I believe, 5 and then 3. So we really need to pull it out to about double the length in order to accommodate it. And we've been working through creating new sections or technical steps. We'll make sure that that's addressed in our final submission.
Okay. So overall, are you evening out the slope through the length?
Yes, so it'll be all 5.
5. Okay. Okay. What about the other ones that you didn't address? There was like a very short one. Just trying to understand what is the current percentage and how are you?
Here we're maybe at 6%, between 5 and 6%. So it really doesn't need to extend much. There's really no disturbance to the critical root zones of the trees in this area. But we'll have, I think it's 3 segments of 30-foot ramp. We'll make sure that that's shown correctly.
So you're not changing the percentage, you're mostly just adding the handrails and the landings just to be compliant.
Yeah.
Okay. Right.
Isabel, we have, sorry, one more presentation for another Central Park location, so we can do that and then come back to the
Got it.
questions.
Okay.
Then we'll be combined.
Well, that addressed my questions.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good morning again. My name is Diane Jackier. I'm the Vice President for Program Management at the Central Park Conservancy. I'm here with my colleague, Nick Koster, to present the Great Hill Public Restroom and Accessibility Improvements Project. So similar to the Delacorte project that we just presented, we have very similar project goals. We're restoring the building's exterior consistent with the historic design. This is one of the 20 by 20 restrooms that are seen throughout the park system. We're going to be updating MEP systems to minimize our carbon footprint, where we're going to be putting in electric heating here and get rid of our gas and oil use. And we are going to be making the facility year-round. It's currently only a seasonal facility. We're improving the restroom accessibility to meet jurisdictional requirements and also creating accessible routes to and from the facility itself. So just to orient everybody, the Great Hill Public Restroom is located on the northwest part of the park, just in from 106th Street. And just to give you a bit of history, this part of the park was once known as Harlem Heights and had great panoramic views of so many different locations. From this 1873 Bogart map, it shows that there was an oval carriage drive here, and there were a lot of people who would come to take in the views of the Palisades and Long Island Sound and Manhattan itself. So in the 1930s, there was a move away from what the original pastoral landscapes were that Olmsted and Vaux had designed. And there were a lot of recreational facilities that were put into different locations in the park, and Great Hill really reflected this trend. So there were horseshoe throwing fields, and there were other sort of stations here that were more recreational. And as a result of that, in 1955, there was a public restroom built to accommodate all the people who were coming to this location for these recreational facilities. So there are just a few other slides that we have showing the designs when the building was built in 1955. And then in the 1980s, the Central Park Conservancy actually started restoring Great Hill back to what its original design was, and restoring the lawn. We've improved the infrastructure and some of the plantings along the pathways in the past several decades, and that's the current condition that we have now. So I'm going to hand it back over to Nick to go through some of the details.
So with the Great Hill project, as it's quite a hilly portion of the park, in order for us to create an accessible route from a drive, we're doing that through using West Drive and working with the path that leads up to the Great Hill lawn and restroom to achieve an accessible path from a drive where someone could be dropped off. Again, just some existing conditions photographs. This would be the condition at the bottom of the drive. It's a wider path that's used for both pedestrian as well as vehicular access up to the restroom and the lawn space. Again, load in, load out for any sort of events that would happen up in this area. Just some other views looking back towards the drive. There's wayfinding, trash, and some temporary signage that is there for bikes. It's the lower portion of the drive is very planted, and the upper portion, it opens up to lawn and mature trees. Just two other photographs from up at the top of the hill where it sort of flattens out onto the Great Hill lawn. So the restroom itself, over time, the windows had been bricked up. The block around the restroom itself is not accessible, nor is the 6 inch, step up into the restroom. So this is a big part of our work. Will be regrading the area around the restroom itself to create accessibility. In terms of the areas that will be impacted, they're outlined with the black dashed line. We'll be creating the slope in this area, I believe, again, is just slightly steeper than 5%. So we'll be creating the ramp system here. And then doing work to reconstruct the area in and around the restroom itself. Just another view of the proposed plan highlighting the locations of those landings and ramps, as well as the path to and from the restroom. We'll be using the same detail that we shared on the previous project. And again, a section. So there is not much of a grade change, just in order to make it compliant with current code. We'll be extending it out shortly to create a ramp with landings. In the area in and around the restroom itself, we'll be taking out the rounded Belgian block, replacing it with an accessible granite block, and restoring the site to be meeting the proposed grading. We'll be using the same pattern that's currently there now. In terms of lighting for this project, similar to the last, using the existing park poles, and concerns that we heard from the community boards as well as our own operation teams, incorporating lighting over each of the doors for safety. The palette, again, this is similar to the other project, the only difference here being the accessible granite block, which you can see an example of an installation in the upper right-hand corner. And in terms of the facade work, repaint or repointing, installing and fixing any of the slate shingles that are missing, adding windows back in with a frosted glass, going back to the historic doors. These are just the three other facades. We'll also be taking off the maintenance bins that are located on the back of the building and relocating them to alleviate some of the issues that we've been having with mold. That's it.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you, Jackie. Do we have any testimony?
I don't believe so, given we already asked. Jenna, is there any more remote testimony for this particular item?
There is not. Is there anyone online who would like to testify? If so, please use the raise hand feature. Seeing none, you can keep going.
Okay, thank you, Jenna. Commissioners, any comments or questions? Okay. I will now take a roll call vote on item 28656, the construction of ADA paths and adjacent site work at Delacorte Theater in Central Park. Commissioners, when I call your name, please state your vote. Isabel Casilla?
Approved.
Lori Hawkinson?
Approved.
Bill Heinzen?
Approved.
Manuel Miranda?
Approved.
Susan Morgenthau?
Approved.
Merrill Tisch? We'll come back to Merrill if she reappears. Mary Valverde?
Approved.
I also vote to approve, so let the record show all in favor. The project is approved. And now a vote on the second project that you presented. I'll take a roll call vote now on item 28657, the construction of an ADA path and adjacent site work at Great Hill in Central Park. Commissioners, when I call your name, please state your vote. Isabel Casilla?
Approved.
Lori Hawkinson?
Approved.
Bill Heinzen?
Approved.
Manuel Miranda?
Approved.
Susan Morgenthau?
Approved.
Merrill Tisch? Mary Valverde?
Approved.
And I also vote to approve, so let the record show all in favor and both projects are approved. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Eva. We will proceed to our committee meeting in a moment. We can start bringing the teams in for the next item.
Let's bring this one first.
Deborah, 1 minute to be back.
I just want to say it's Merrill and the microphone is off. Hold on one second. It's Merrill, the microphone is off. We cannot hear.
We have not started yet, Meryl. Thank you. We're
Okay.
almost getting
Thank you.
started. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. We will now begin the committee meeting with the conceptual review of the reconstruction of the Brooklyn Detention Complex at 275 Atlantic Avenue. We will not hear public testimony or vote on this project today. Presenters, you can begin when ready. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning, commissioners. I'm Michaela Metcalf, the Executive Director of Design and Construction Excellence at the Department of Design and Construction. DDC is here today to present the conceptual design for the Brooklyn Detention Facility as part of the city's borough-based jails program. So I just wanted to say a couple of things. This is truly a groundbreaking moment. The program is critical for this city, and it is here. It is intended to support criminal justice reform. And we've heard about this for a very long time. The team has been working very hard and to deliver on this promise and to support that reform. We appreciate, of course, your input in this process and look forward to the comments you have to share today and moving forward. So I'm joined here today by representatives of the team from DDC, from the Department of Correction, from the Correctional Health Service, and also the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. They will all be available to answer any questions that you may have. And at this moment, I would like to hand it over to Ken Drucker from HOK to present the project to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michaela. So for us, it's a real honor to be selected to design this civic building. For us, it's about dignity and respect and bringing dignity and respect to the persons in custody, the staff and the community who will be seeing and participating in this building. I'm going to be presenting just some site analysis initially. And this slideshow is catered to the questions that were submitted in response to earlier reviews. The models are out in the lobby. Amin Christian is the design principal working as the architectural principal with me. I'm the lead designer, and Tuda Perini is our construction manager and builder. And Autumn Visconti is our public realm landscape architect, also with HOK. So we have about 15 or 20 minutes, so I'm going to go very quickly. We all know where the site is. It's one of 4 sites for the borough-based jail program in Brooklyn. It's a fantastic site, basically bounded by Atlantic, Smith, Bourne, and State. It really represents the southern boundary of downtown Brooklyn, and it's really important as an interface between Bourne Hill to the south, and it acts as a fulcrum at the southern end of the corridor leading from Cadman Plaza and the Civic Corridor. The existing building is being decommissioned as we speak, and it has, incredible visibility, especially along Atlantic. The nature of Atlantic and Bourne and Smith, all 4 streets are slightly different in terms of the scale and the pedestrian activity and the retail frontage. So these are just some existing slides showing some of the context. It's a fantastic opportunity as an architect to work on such a visible site that really is the fulcrum between Brooklyn Heights, Cadman Plaza, downtown Brooklyn, Boerum Hill, and Cobble Hill. It's very visible along Atlantic Avenue, moving both in the east and the west. The model before you is a conceptual model showing the scale and the intensity of our efforts to get daylight deep within the body of this block. Yeah, so you're basically, this is Atlantic. So this is facing south. This is Boerum Hill to the south. Cadman Plaza up Boerum is in this direction. This is State Street along this edge. And this is Smith. We have, Amin's going to go through some of the sightline issues and some of the issues around the visibility of some of the programmatic spaces within the building itself. It has great subway access. We have to be very sensitive as we're building the building, making sure that we're protecting the subways around the perimeter. Great access for the community in terms of bus and subway access and pedestrian access. Within a 15-minute walking distance, you can see access to all the different neighborhoods. The project being dismantled does not go all the way to the property line. We'll be going all the way to the property line and basically building out to a little less than the approved ULURP zoning envelope. And Amin will describe what that envelope is and how we're carving into that envelope. Essentially, our front door is at the intersection of Atlantic and Boerum. There's a requirement for 30,000 square feet of community space along Atlantic, which we are not programming. It's going to be a separate exercise. But we're providing for mechanical systems 2 levels of 30,000 square feet and a front door off of Atlantic. We're creating a new public plaza at the intersection of Atlantic and Boerum. The main lobby essentially interfaces with State and Boerum, with the front door off of Boerum. And then we've got service entrances, sally ports. I'll go into a more detailed explanation of the perimeter of the site. So the 2 red arrows at the top represent entrances into the loading dock, ambulance, and sally port. Buses and ambulance would drive through that green line and then exit, making a left turn onto Smith Street. There's parking for 100 spaces below grade, and you can see the in and out arrows on Smith Street for that. The community space is located along Atlantic with the main entrance closer to the intersection of Smith and Atlantic, but 2 other entrances are provided. And then Autumn is going to describe the plaza and the main entrance to the front door. In terms of the sequence of moving into the building, the front door is basically on the northern edge of the public plaza. And there's a series of security requirements to get people into the lobby itself. The community space is essentially programmed separately, and then the gray area represents sort of back of house. The staff entrance is off the corner of State and Boerum. And we have to maintain many of the separations and security screening. The idea is to move people quickly off the plaza. We've got space for screening about 30 people at a time, and then ample waiting. On the corner, we've got a children's play area and a seating waiting area, and then people are screened to go up to visitors on an upper floor of the building. And then when persons in custody are released, they're basically released through social services, and then they exit with the rest of the public out onto the plaza on the bottom of the diagram. In terms of connections to the existing courthouse at level 2, there's an elevator that connects to the tower above. And then underneath State Street, we've got 1 tunnel that provides for persons in custody access to the courthouse itself. Amin?
Yeah, I can do that. And I'll, good morning. I'll walk you through the architecture design for the building itself. Essentially, we're looking at a diagram section of the building, the way it's organized. We have 2 levels below grade that house building support and parking. The first 2 floors above grade are lobby and community space, as Ken just showed you in the plan. And then most of the podium is support for the building, such as administration, admissions, and release. And then the housing towers really start from half of level 5 upwards to the on the building. And then the top of the building is mechanical. And what you see in the blue is the horticulture program right at the top of the building. And what we see in green through the middle of the building are recreation areas available to people in custody. So just looking at one of the typical floor plans, this is a therapeutic floor. Most of the perimeter of the building is lined with housing cells. So every person in custody has access to natural light, direct access to natural light. Those cells connect to a generous day space, and that connects each housing unit there then has access to an outdoor recreation area that brings in daylight to the overall floor plate, deep into the floor plates. And then the center of the building, of course, is the circulation and also additional programs and support for those housing units themselves. There was a question in the informal review about the utilization of the corners of the building and why we had allocated mechanical space there. One of the biggest criteria, obviously, in designing this facility is security requirements. And we have to ensure that from the officer's station, there is always an unobstructed line of sight, and the corners become incredibly problematic to achieve that line of sight. So it is a little bit contrary to how we would have designed a commercial building or any of these, but the security requirement, therefore, it's the best place to put mechanical in that corner because we won't be able to put anything else in there. We have, as you see, within the center of the building, utilized return corners so we can start minimizing that line of sight issue and start to really use the corners of the building here to start bringing the daylight into the floor plates. And then a general population floor plan, very, very similar organization again, housing cells around most of the perimeter, linking to the day spaces that is again gives access to outdoor recreation. This is different from the current program in terms of outdoor recreation, where the people in custody will have direct access to the outdoor on a day-to-day basis and therefore an autonomy in making decisions about that access. And then we're, as we design this building, we're being very, very careful in how we design these outdoor spaces. We have to balance security requirements, but also access to fresh air and light, and using these spaces to bring daylight in. So we continue to do daylight studies and make sure as we apply security requirements that daylight is continuously coming in. And then, we're also looking at renderings of the interior, trying to maximize that daylight penetration. An interior view of the outdoor recreation area. Again, the lower part is for security requirements, and I'll show you, even though it feels a little, it is actually a screen that allows a fair bit of air movement to go through it. And then the upper part, the screen disappears to allow that daylight and fresh air to really come into the space. And the reason for that is we have to be mindful of a couple of different security requirements. One is we have to minimize or prevent any cross viewing between different housing units and different rec yards. So the first 6 feet, 6 to 7 feet is what prevents, is that visual screen that prevents that cross viewing. So and then above that is a very tall space that brings the daylight in. Second consideration, and I'll get to that when we get to the massing concept, is how the security works for viewing to the street and the surrounding neighborhoods and residences around the site itself. So in the massing concept, we of course start with the ULURP. Everything we're doing is within the approved ULURP, which is 300, we're allowed 300 odd feet plus 40 feet of mechanical, maintaining street walls around the site, allowing for community space. So we start by taking the community, the ULURP envelope, and carving public spaces at the ground floor, space at the corner of Borum Plaza and Atlantic Avenue. Cadman Plaza is really sort of the organizing spine of the civic buildings along Brooklyn, and that comes down Borum Place. So this facility becomes therefore sort of this southern anchor of the Brooklyn Civic District. So we very in line with Europe, but also very consciously placed a public space at that southern anchor. So giving back to the people the idea of the civic role the building should play. And then also carving out a smaller public space on Atlantic and on State to provide opportunities for landscape and seating. And then secondarily, we carved the building to bring daylight deep into the floor plates, the idea of creating a normative environment for people in custody, an idea of creating a healing environment for people in custody. And as we did that, what it also, in terms of its external gestures, breaks the mass of the building down, really introduces a whole host of setbacks and stepping in the building to reduce its apparent scale in the site. And then the scale of the elements within the carve out, within those reveals, start to relate to the brownstones and the scale of the brownstones in the context. So as I was saying, what we've used most of those spaces is to organize our recreation yards. One of the things we heard from the community is they're concerned about any visual or acoustic connection to the recreation yards. Obviously, the rest of the building is enclosed, so there's very little visual and acoustic connection, but rec yards, they're open to air, right? So there's connection. So what we're showing in here is in the darker orange are the taller residential buildings around the site, and in the lighter orange are the low-rise residential buildings around the site. In essentially placing the recreation yards in the center of the building, both north and south, we've pulled them away from the residential neighbors, so they don't have any direct visual connection. There are a few recreation yards on the west and the east that we were very carefully designing, also pulling them close to the center of the building, not in the corners. So they are far further away from the residential around the site. And therefore that screening element in the recreation yard is also very important to prevent that cross viewing into neighbors and provide the neighbors privacy. So of course we want to be a good neighbor to our surroundings. But essentially, we're approaching this project as a civic project, which wants to be grounded in the ideas of dignity and respect. The idea of connecting to the civic, to its civic neighbors, taking from the materiality of the courthouse directly north of the site and Borough Hall, a light color in terms of materiality that's incorporated, learning from the brownstones and the detail of the brownstones in how we define the center of the building in the reveals. We are referencing, in terms of the facade, we're expressing a double height expression of floors, which corresponds to the civic expression of both Borough Hall and the courthouse, learning from the idea of the columns of Borough Hall and courthouse, and designing the sculpted vertical elements that mimic that. And then learning from articulated cornices from the brownstone to define those horizontal edges. And as you move around the building, the way the light is caught in these sculpted members changes, and it becomes quite a dynamic experience. But more than its aesthetic qualities, it is providing a really important function. It is providing solar shading for the building, increasing its performance and optimization, but it's also providing from within the building privacy to the users, to the people in custody, and to the surrounding neighbors. So of course, if you have a window straight, you look straight out the window, you will see, but the moment you're slightly at an angle, these fins provide tremendous amount of privacy between residents and people in custody. And then this is a view from State Street, learning from the datums of the courthouse, carrying those datums through the building, and really sort of starting to tie the building into its context. The northern corner of the building meets the ground, anchoring the building to the ground, but also this is a view that starts to illustrate how the carve out is really making the building appear as smaller, broken massing rather than a very, very large building around the site. and in some facade studies in detail. So we're really broadly looking at two different facade treatments. One, which I just spoke about, is the civic scale facade, which is the two-story facade with the vertical sculpted elements and the horizontal sculpting. And then the center of the building in the reveal, which is really, which is a warmer material and incorporates some staggering to give it a residential feel. It brings it down in scale from the civic element to a human scale. And then just taking another closer look at the detail of our civic facade. And we're starting to work with our contracting partners to figure out how this would be manufactured, how this would be incorporated. A typical detail of how that works in plan. The cells, each of these cells will come as a steel cube, essentially, so like a shipping container. And that has security built into it, so that will also already have its secure glazing. The facade essentially sits in front of that, providing a tremendous amount of depth here that provides that solar shading component. But also this is what provides the privacy when people in custody are in their cells and to the adjacent neighbors around. So a typical section, again, looking at that relationship as well. We have a very residential scale sill, and then windows providing view to people in custody outside. And then we're continuing to do solar studies, making sure that the facade is performing and it's feeding into the energy model. And then in terms of materiality, we're looking at essentially metal panel for most of the facade, but the material in terms of tone, in terms of texture and colors relating to the civic buildings, and bringing in warmer colors, darker colors relating to the brownstones of the surrounding context. And then, of course, when we pick our glass, we'll be cognizant of picking glass that are low reflection, bird-safe glass. A warmer metal similar to bronze for the base of the building. And then we're looking at some aluminum darker gray colors that will essentially recede for the louvers, and a jet mist, a granite for the very base of the building itself. So I'll hand over to Autumn to talk about landscape.
Thank you. Which one's next? Got it. Okay. Thank you. So kicking off in the landscape and public realm, we really wanted to look at future forward approaches for our site design. We looked at all of the New York City design guidelines, and we were specifically interested in looking at the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership's Vision 2030 Vision Plan as it relates to the downtown Brooklyn neighborhoods. We were also looking at PDC's Streetscapes for Wellness and how we can think about a future forward approach to our streetscape design, specifically using elements in the landscape and furnishing to create this kind of holistic, continued experience throughout the downtown communities and beyond. As such, we're looking at the recently approved PDC tree pit designs, which are curvilinear in nature. They're beyond your standard square tree pits. And we think this is kind of a fun and playful way to create a human scale design experience at the ground level. So looking at the site plan, we are using different elements of landscape and furnishing to help create a calm and garden-like environment at the streetscape by increasing tree canopy as much as possible, increasing porosity adjacent to the tree pits, increasing seating specifically around the plazas and the entrances, and creating continuous runs of planting to help ensure a better pedestrian experience adjacent to busy vehicular thoroughfares such as Bourne Place and Atlantic Avenue. We also want to integrate as much as the security design elements into the overall streetscape design, and I'm going to walk through that in the coming slides. But the overall idea is creating this approach where we have porous intersections and porous rooms where you create an inviting experience to the site at each of the intersections, and then using landscape as a guiding element to bring people to the entrances and along the streetscape. speaking of the security strategy, we are beginning to really be precise about the different types of security design elements and where they're being positioned. That relates to crash-rated security zones that are centered primarily at the building entrances. You can see here at the corner of Atlantic and Boren Place, as well as the Atlantic Avenue entrance to the community center. We also have vehicular entrances, which will have to have a more robust wedge barrier. And then the perimeter around the entire site will be security rated vehicular deterrence, which can double as regular streetscape furnishing elements. So again, the bulk of the security design is going to be focused around the entrances of the facility. As such, we were developing this streetscape toolkit where we have these this idea of porous elements that are very kind of static in nature, but easy to move around, and guiding elements such as long runs of planters to help really guide pedestrians around the site. So we wanted to array this around the block and think about how we can use landscape and furnishing elements as a way to create additional civic amenities centered at different points around the site. Continuing on that furnishing palette, we have to work with some bollards, and we want to integrate those as much as possible as part of the security design and the idea of porous rooms. And also looking at taking a kind of planter that's crash rated and doubling that into, or transforming that into a crash rated bench. So really it's the back of the bench that's a security element, and you're creating an opportunity for seating and social gathering. So an example of this in plan view is using these kind of bench elements that face the plaza and using long runs of planting to help create a natural vegetative buffer from the busy thoroughfares of Atlantic Avenue and Boren Place, for example. We reviewed and took very seriously the different types of seating elements, and they're not clear in this diagram, but we are proposing diverse seating elements such as movable seating, backed seating, armed seating, cutouts for ADA in the areas that surround the entrances of the building, and then using the landscape to create these kind of nooks and creating just smaller rooms of solitude, especially for people that are entering and exiting the facility. Looking at a conceptual section, this is how we envision the kind of tree and tree pits planting strategy in relation to the larger security elements that are that double as the benches, and then facing different opportunities for seating on the plaza side. Again, kind of weighing a little bit more of the scale of the space in relation to the planting and making sure there's ample planting and also ample areas for people to walk and pass through. Looking at, again, a very conceptual overview of our planting and materials palette, we are using native understory plantings, also given some of the environmental conditions of the site and ensuring long-term maintainability. We're looking at shade-tolerant species as well as evergreen species that are easy to maintain. We're looking at raised beds and seating that varies in materiality and textures from wooden slat seating to cast-in-place concrete. We're looking at breaking down the scale of the typical sidewalk from cast-in-place concrete as a direct thoroughfare for pedestrians to walk through, and then breaking down the scale of that with smaller unit pavers that kind of really give kind of a skirt or kind of a buffer between the sidewalks and the planting. So a quick walkthrough here. This is on the corner of Atlantic and Boren, kind of facing towards the main entrance of the facility. Really using these kind of sweeping soft geometries to create this kind of softer nature and a kind of a more playful tone to the ground level streetscape. This also all relates to the Downtown Brooklyn Partnership's design guidelines for geometries, and we're working with Downtown Brooklyn Partnership on the maintenance agreements, as well as the New York City Parks Department in terms of the updated design standard for all the geometries and beyond. Standing in the same position, but pivoting down Atlantic Avenue. This is how we envision using long runs of planting to help create a natural buffer. We want to preserve as many existing street trees on site and really create a more robust ecosystem that supports the thriving street trees and understory planting, backed by our reinforced security design benches. Moving a little bit further up on the site, this is the staff entrance, which is located on State Street. Again, creating a more of a garden-like experience at the entrances and really creating areas for seating and creating an inviting and welcoming approach to the building. So moving up off the street level, we have our horticultural design for the Hort program on the 14th floor. The program calls for a separate greenhouse structure that's adjacent to an outdoor open air learning and outdoor classroom facility where we have movable plantings for crops and herbaceous perennials, but also thinking about how the outdoor space can double as a classroom for hands-on learning activities. So we envision this space to be very similar in the design geometries to the ground floor and thinking about softer curves and no hard corners and really creating a more serene, inviting and landscape design for this. So I'm going to hand it back over to Aman to talk through the streetscape experience.
Thank you. So just walking around the site, starting from the corner of Atlantic and Borum, we've got the public plaza that Autumn spoke about. We've made, this has been changed a little bit since you saw it in the RFP, where the entrance has moved from the center towards facing Atlantic. Essentially, that has happened because we've now incorporated security screening and queuing space for security screening all within the building. That was an addition to the program, so it grew in size in the lobby. There was a question about whether we have sufficient space for queuing. Yes, and we're doing modeling. So all of the queuing will be happening inside the building, stopping any queuing or minimizing any queuing on in the plaza itself. And then as we go around the building on Atlantic Avenue, we've got 2 floors of community space that is transparent to the street and supports the retail experience of Atlantic, east and west of the block. It has 3 entrances along Atlantic, one towards the north, one in the middle, and then one on the corner of Smith and State. We've made the corner of State and Smith, Smith and Atlantic carried a typical podium curtain wall, which essentially takes the idea of the facade of the tower, but incorporates a hierarchy of elements, starting to incorporate a rhythm of brownstones, which is about 25 to 30 feet, and so mimicking that sense of experience on the street itself. There was a comment in the informal about, or actually in the RFP about the loading dock doors. We have reduced the overhang of the loading dock doors. We've reduced the width of the doors. In the RFP, we've shown a much more horizontal, vaster expense. This is now constrained only to the area of the doors itself. So therefore, their visual impact on the street has been minimized. And then similarly, as we come across State, a similar idea, but also on State, this notion of using the carve out or the reveal to incorporate seating and landscape to provide some facilities along the pedestrian experience. And then we're moving along State towards the west. We're looking at the vehicular entrances similar to Smith. These have also been revised to reduce their apparent visual impact on the street. And then on the corner of State and Borum Place is the staff entrance, which provides them with a the building steps back, so there is a little plaza in front of it. There's opportunities for landscape and seating for the staff itself. It provides a entrance that celebrates the staff, but is also discreet enough that it's not, doesn't make them a target for in the facility. And I think that's the end.
So we basically wanted to conclude by saying we've designed this building from the inside out and from the outside in. It's an incredibly important civic building. Working with the scale, the massing, breaking down the scale, the potential zoning envelope was our major goal. Creating an articulated facade that's all about energy performance and optimization of the facades. We really are lucky that we have a very deep facade that we can sculpt And, you know, the selection of the palette of materials is meant to exude warmth, like the palette of the existing courthouse, Borough Hall, and the warmth of brownstones across the street. And then in terms of creating a more normative environment, you know, we're looking for opportunities to bring daylight deep into the space. It's about well-being. We're looking for opportunities for biomimicry and biophilia within the building itself. And the carved stepping that you see allows us, with a very complicated program, to provide daylight for every single cell, every single major public space within the building for the persons in custody and the staff and the visitors. Even the visitors have access to outdoor area when they're visiting as well. So with that, we're ready to open up for any questions you might have.
Thank you for that very complete presentation and also for addressing some of the comments that we've made. I know some of my fellow commissioners will have questions. Lori, do you want to start?
Yeah, thanks so much. Really very thorough. And thanks so much for the presentation. I might have to scurry out, so I wanted to make sure I got to speak here. So thanks you for opening up those light wells wider. I think it's really helps a lot. I'm not sure I understand your interior light study completely, but maybe we'll get more information on that moving forward. One thing that I lament, and I'm sure you maybe lament too, is the mechanical rooms on the corner. And I understand the panopticon idea that you have to see, but it just, you know, and I know that you got more cells added later. So you're having to make up, you know, it's hard. It's a difficult program. You're trying to put a lot in there. So I appreciate what you're doing. I just wish that there was some way, because it seems like the most obvious way to bring daylight in, you know, that we could echelon or open up those cells at the corner more so that you could see. I mean, there are ways to do it if you had a little more breathing room, right? It's not like there's no way to do it, right? So it's not impossible. So, I mean, I assume you've hit every wall that you can. You've tried everything you can, because I just feel whom I'm trying to represent are both those who are inside in these cells and also the families who are coming to visit, as well as the neighborhood and everybody else. I feel that's our responsibility. So I was interested if you had a view from inside the cell. I never saw a view inside looking out. Did we see that? I know we saw the exercise area, but I never saw what it was like to be in that, because there was a lot of work that came before you with the studies that we all were involved in some people here, about how, you know, the quality of light, the size of the windows, all of that. So I just don't have a good mental image of that. So that'd be great to see at some point. And the facade sculpting, I'm not sure I understand how it works yet. So I'll be looking forward to understanding that in more detail. Like, I don't understand how that thing, you know, how the
how the
sun, you know,
twist,
it's like there's a lot going on
right
in plan section, you know, with the sun and the light. So it'd be great to, I'm sure you're doing your due diligence. It's just not communicated that clearly to me. Maybe
we can show you the plan sections of the solar angles. In terms of the corner rooms, there's a lot of linear feet of cells that require frontage, and working with the Department of Corrections and the state Department of Corrections, the issue really is line of sight. So if we were to put, let's say, another function in the corner other than mechanical space, the issue is the side walls of the cells prevent a view into that space.
I totally understand it.
So that's the issue there. In terms of the optimization, our sustainable group is looking at the energy performance with our mechanical engineers, and the depth of the wall is an investment in reducing the heat gain on all four sides of the building by about 14 or 15%. So we can show you in plan those solar angles. We're fortunate that our contracting partner allows us to have an 18-inch deep wall, because in most cases in a design build process, the goal is to get that to be as thin as possible. So we're really happy we've been able to hold on to the articulation of the facade. And in terms of the cells, we have basically a goal of 18 square feet per cell. We can share those views with you. Once again, that's going through the design phase and costing phase right now, but we do have views we can share with you in the next
So there are minimum
submission.
requirements. that
Yes.
you're complying, of course.
Right.
Just like to see it.
Yeah, that's great.
Thanks.
Isabel.
Thank you. Thank you again for the presentation. First off, I want to say that I saw the prior streetscape iteration. I think this one is a lot more successful to be integrating the downtown Brooklyn curvilinear geometry, really breaks the scale of what could otherwise feel like a very long and relentless sidewalk, and adds a lot more softness that I think it's in this particular context is very successful. I have a couple of questions and suggestions of things on how to move forward. The first one is that you had a very clear diagram on the areas that need to have K-12 rated protection, but the other ones that were not those blue masses, what is the K rating for those?
Right now it is K8. But you can use vehicular deterrents such as, planting or road signs or streetlights or bike racks, and that should suffice for that area. We're working with our security design engineer and kind of fleshing that out.
Okay, and that's something that NYPD has accepted, because generally the issue with K rating is not just the mass of the object, but it's the height of the object. And I'm a little bit worried that some of the elements you showed on the presentation, like the big pebble seats, usually are considered actually something that allows a vehicle to hit it and propel and jump over and arrive at a faster speed. So I'm just curious, I fully understand the intent of integrating street furniture that softens the look, minimizes bollards. I think we all are forward to that, but I just want to be more careful about how that is presented and make sure that in fact it does pass those projectile tests. So the community, for example, doesn't get excited about certain elements that later perhaps do not do their job in terms of that K rating.
I think after we submitted this, the conceptual review, we're beginning to run our vector analysis, and the results are leaning more towards a friendlier landscape design. So we're happy about that. And we still need to meet with FDNY and NYPD and DOT to go through the layout of all the bollards and security design arrangements. But yes, the height elements is something that we're taking serious, especially on those kind of larger rated vehicular roadways adjacent to the site.
Yeah. So I would just be very careful about, those K8 or less, what exactly are they? When it comes to K-12, we know that there's a lot of restrictions. I do appreciate that you're trying to blend bollards with benches to make it feel a little bit less, like a full line of bollards. But I think the unfortunate result that we're seeing on the images is that the benches start becoming very hefty and in a way they lose their elegance and feel a little bit less comfortable. They do feel like a wall. Yeah. So just several thoughts just to explore further. One is, because you have this curvilinear planter geometry, I don't know what your subgrade conditions is. I don't know what your utilities are, but is there any way to have a continuous line of bollards in the planter with a deep foundation so that you still have soil depth around it, and the plantings themselves, with a careful selection of plantings and shrubs, can hide those bollards? So you have your secure perimeter, but you're not bulking up benches or having a mix and match of bollards with benches, which sometimes NYPD doesn't love. And that way you minimize the appearance, but you're fully integrating it into the landscape. And this doesn't work in a lot of cases because we have very narrow sidewalks, but here you do have wide sidewalks. So I wonder if there is enough place in the planter to have that balance between bollards, foundations, and planting soil.
And that's a solution we're currently exploring. We do want to be mindful of the existing trees along Atlantic, but where we're proposing trees, we can see an option like that very viable.
Okay. Another thought is, if you do decide to go with benches, is there a way to treat the benches a little bit differently, where perhaps there is a wall that acts as your crash barrier, and maybe the bench is more of a lighter object that is attached to that wall, similar to the torn sole Kips benches that you showed there, because then again, the seating element becomes warmer. You can integrate wood, you can have angles that are a little bit more optimal for comfort, and you let the wall be the wall. And in doing that, it kind of recedes a little bit into the background. So just some thoughts, just again, I know this is a bit of a struggle, and I know you're doing the intent is in the right directions. Just how do we make it, again, not result in something that feels too hefty? Then my last comment is just in terms of the overall distribution of seating. I do think understanding the building program a little bit more thoroughly now with this presentation. Definitely the amount of sitting around Bottom Place and Atlantic Avenue feels right. But I question a little bit the introduction of sitting on State Street and Smith Street. State Street in particular is very shady. It's not going to have a lot of foot traffic. It's more of a bit of a back of house. So I wonder if in terms of effort, it's best to concentrate effort on the more public sidewalks. And Smith Street, similarly, you do have a lot more activity. You do have a bike lane. You do have the front of the hotel. But again, it does feel a little bit like more the ingress and egress of vehicles. So I would prefer to concentrate sitting in areas that are more active, more visible from a safety perspective, and from a budget perspective, also make those be a lot more, well-defined. And perhaps those other streets are more about planting that softens the street, merges in with the context, but it's less of a habitable space.
Right. And that in those areas, that's because the benches serve as the security element. That's an opportunity to integrate more of the bollards hidden in the planters in those areas. It's great feedback. Thank you.
Okay, any other feedback from commissioners?
I still consider this to be a problematic project, considering that there's still Rikers Island, Rikers Island project is still in effect and it has not been closed. But I understand and I'm sensitive to the fact that this is something that you're still working on as a city project. And even with that, I still think that since you've redesigned the outdoor space and landscape to have more curvilinear structure and design and geometric curves, I wonder why that sort of vocabulary is not being accessed or used in on the actual building facade, because everything still looks like, a regular grid, a metallic grid that is, to me, I understand you've added some warm qualities to it, but it still does not, it still feels like a jail. It looks like a typical grid metal binding element all the way around. So I think that I understand that the light is coming in and there's some warm elements and that's a plus, but still it looks very, from the ground floor, very aggressive and angular when you come to that corner of the street. So I would urge for you to reconsider probably another element of breaking the grid in a different way so that it doesn't look so prison-like, considering that you're in a very public space where a lot of people travel and walk and around. I do think that you should consider all the way around being of an access to the public, and seating should be all the way around, considering that this isn't a viable neighborhood where people are always walking around. There's a lot of subway stations, like you mentioned. So I don't think you should not consider putting benches all the way around and having that be a communal space for people not just people who make use of this jail, but make use of the community and walkways so that they could sit down and perhaps have some lunch or stop by and enjoy whatever is part of the city's public spaces. I also question the fact that the actual cells and we're not really seeing what it looks like inside from the inside out. I think that's really important. I think it must be included in your presentation and then your design project, not just the sightline of the person inside, but also the square footage. All of that information should be important, that the public should understand and see how those spaces are being made use of. Also, any HR facility, any medical facility, how close everything is to each other, how they're actually helping the community while they're inside the space, how families access those spaces. I think all of that should be in your presentation. Also, I think it's a shame that because you're making more room for more jails, there's less space for recreational space. I think that I wanted to make sure that that's something that is not a positive. That looks really bad, and I think that the public will have something to consider and say later on when you do present it. So I understand that the horticulture is a positive element. How often they have access to this is, I think, part of the programming and part of how often someone can access that is important. And I understand that you don't have the ability to discern like how often someone has access to it, but perhaps if that's one of the only things you have, is there an opportunity for more descriptive community program spaces like a library or whatever it is that could be utilized in those corners? I don't know, something, or maybe those corners could be where the the security can have a vantage point to see everything. I don't know. But I think you're not using the corners and having less communal spaces is definitely a negative in terms of the design.
So I think maybe we should answer collectively, but I think we should clarify that there is quite a lot of program space. So there is a central library. There is a whole floor for medical within the building. There is also a culinary arts program. There is also a gymnasium outside of the outdoor recreation area and a indoor gymnasium, which so there is a lot of facilities that are provided to the people in custody. In terms of visitors, they will essentially have access to the lobby, and from the lobby to a visiting space, which has a indoor component and outdoor component. It is also designed for children and children of all ages. So there is actually a huge amount of program that we are incorporating in the building than just the cells and what we're able to share because of security reasons, which is the reason why, all of the space has tremendous demand on it. So that's the answer for the programming component. The other question was about the fluidity in the facade. What we are trying to do is work very, very closely with how the building works internally, and that's the expression externally. So as we had shown in the plan, and I'll try and illustrate it with the model, each of these vertical members that are sculpted, between that is the width of the window for the people in custody. So it's calibrated to what program is happening internally. And therefore the grid, because we have to line them up. We've got to try to get as much operational efficiency out of the building as we can. And perhaps if you get a chance to walk around the model, one of the things that we've done in terms of fluidity is the way we are sculpting these vertical members. Those moments of detail that we have the opportunity, the fact that it is a twist and it turns as it rises up, does in fact cast this idea of light differently and brings a little bit of that notion of fluidity. But your feedback is great, and I think we will continue to study how the streetscape experience can be further enhanced and further made more human and intimate. Did we answer all your questions?
Yes, thank you.
I had one more question too. So the community programming for the space along Atlantic, is that a separate kind of?
So that is a community space that is being treated almost as a separate building from the rest of the facility. The city will undertake a rigorous program to figure out what the use of that space will be, and that will also incorporate community engagement process.
Okay. Will that come by here, or will we see that? I just think, how it's activated and like the windows will really affect, the experience on the streetscape, for, walking down the land.
And also, whatever happens on the inside in terms of programming, there's a whole other element of funding and whether these programs actually exist. And if they're shifted between, being a communal space and that it's activated by the people inside, or if they just end up not being funded or a library doesn't get funded and then that becomes another cell. So we would just want to make sure that the priority are those spaces to remain those spaces and not to then later on be shifted to become, to be more cells.
You know, that 30,000 square feet is part of the ULURP, and so that's all safe in terms of public programming. So it will never be converted into.
Not just the
another
public
function.
programming, I'm saying internally, with like the medical space, the communal.
No, none of that.
units.
It will always remain community space.
Hi, I'm Alex Maldonado from the Department of Correction. The current design, we are anticipating the number of beds and the programming that has been described here already today. And so I don't, again, the goal is never overcrowding. That is never the operational goal of a jail. So we anticipate to use the spaces as they're designed.
So
I just wanted to add to that. We obviously also have to conform to code. So for example, in terms of the outdoor areas, we are compliant with, there is a minimum requirement per person that we absolutely cannot go under that. We are in excess of what code requires.
So I understand, Jimmy, that you have a comment, but before I call on you, as we have you up here, Alex, Mary raised some questions around the experience of those who will be held in this jail. And we understand that there are security constraints on seeing some of the interior details, which is why we're mostly looking at and speaking of the facade and the public spaces around the structure. I wonder if you could articulate for us what we can see, for example, because we would like to see, as Mary suggested, what one cell looks like, what the light is, and regardless of, we'd like to see the maximum of what we could see. So if you could speak to that.
Sure, absolutely. And I think, our plans are to share renderings of all of the interior spaces, not only with the commission, but also with members of the public. So we will have renderings of what it feels like to be inside a cell, for example, and what that view out would be, as well as what it feels like to be in the day room. What we can't share, unfortunately, is floor plans due to security reasons. But I believe renderings are part of our anticipated package in the future.
Okay, thank you. And again, the point being for us to see as much as we can see of what is happening inside. Jimmy, please go ahead.
Thank you, Deborah. First, I just want to say, I think an incredible amount of thought and attention and care has been demonstrated by the teams who have been working on this project, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do for so many reasons. And maybe I have a different opinion from some of the commissioners, but I do not think that this building looks particularly like a jail. I have a correctional facility in my former district in Long Island City near LaGuardia Community College. And this building looks more like the residential towers along the waterfront than the correctional facility in Long Island City that exists today. I think it's actually incredibly well done. And as someone who cares a great deal about libraries, obviously it is reassuring to know that the library space is dedicated and permanent and won't be sacrificed for any reasons going forward. I think the attention to the surrounding community, to families who will be visiting, those who are in the facility, and the security, but also the attention to the community in and around this building is particularly strong. And I think this is not something that everyone's ever going to agree on because of the very nature of the facility. But the teams have been working on this and you can tell, I mean, one of the images of the gym or the basketball court, you know, that I saw in the previous slide, you know, is actually quite impressive. And I just I wanted to say that I've just been impressed with how much care and concern and thought has gone into this, to do something that is virtually impossible and make it possible. So I wanted to be sure to share that. I do not think this looks like a jail at all. I think it's actually a very impressive structure.
Thank you, Jimmy. Any last comments before I summarize? Okay, so thank you very much for this detailed proposal in what is, we all understand, a very challenging program and project for many, many reasons. We look forward to next time seeing some more, or really as much as possible, of what the conditions will be like inside the structure. We appreciate the work that the team has done to bring more light and air into the center. In response to our comments, thank you for that, and we think it will result in improved conditions for those who have to spend time in the structure. Regarding summarizing Isabel's comments regarding the landscape, we really appreciate your efforts to bring in the elements from the downtown Brooklyn design guidelines, and I think the landscape is much improved. So we request that you think about integrating the walls perhaps with benches, thinking about the K ratings on that, and also vis-a-vis height. Perhaps integrating bollards and other security furnishings into the landscape itself. And then finally, both Mary and Isabel raised the question of siting, of where the seating goes. And I think we have a little bit of a difference of opinion there. I think looking at a little study of traffic there and also community feedback on who would use what seating where could be useful in making that decision. But I want to say that, you know, we all want to make sure that this facility is as integrated and humane as it can be. And I want to recognize that you are making your efforts to do that, as well as your department. So thank you for that work. And we look forward to your next presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we're now going to take a 10-minute break, and we will resume the public meeting at 12:50-ish. Thank you.
I'll give us a moment. Okay. Assuming we are live, I'm not hearing no, so we will get started again.
Yes, we are still live.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, good afternoon. This is Nancy Prince and the Chief of Landscape Architecture at New York City Parks. And we're here with Oracle Playground. And we're here with one of our new on-call landscape architects. And this is a fun little playground with all the complexities of our larger projects and our typical projects. And I think the designers have done a great job using standard materials in a really fun way. So I'm going to introduce Yadiel Rivera and Young's. Great. Great. Thank you. And they'll present it here. Go.
All right. Thank you, Nancy, and thank you, all of you, for having us here today. We're very excited to present to you a fun project, Oracle Playground. The playground is, so we are at Marvel, just so you all know. We are new to the on-call program, but we're very excited to have been working on this project for the last few months. The project is located in the Adelphi Street, between Adelphi Street and Claremont Avenue in the, oh yeah, that's right, thank you. In Brooklyn, the Fort Greene neighborhood, and we have around $2.5 million for construction budget. Let me see if I can do this. I'll just put my phone away. All right, so we work with parks on developing key goals for this project. They're very simple, straightforward, but very effective. Provide a community, an inclusive and accessible and sustainable park or playground, facilitate activities for children of all ages, maximize play value, protect and enhance planting. We have really beautiful shade trees, really tall shade existing trees that we need to protect, add lighting and create a safe and welcoming environment. The project is in Fort Greene, like I said before, between Adelphi Street and Claremont Avenue, very close to Myrtle Avenue, and it's right next to or south of PS 46 Edward C. Blum School and the Fort Greene Preparatory Academy. The site does not fall within coastal flood-prone area, or is also not within any sort of moderate or extreme flooding condition. But we don't have, the site doesn't offer much area for managing stormwater, adjacent stormwater within the site, but we are trying to keep as much of the stormwater managed within the site. We do have, there's an adjacent site, if we go back maybe a couple slides right here, which a DEP project is underway, under design, and basically this is a stormwater infrastructure project that we're coordinating with them. It doesn't fall within an MS4 outfall area, so we don't have to worry about that. We know adjacent to a school, public school, very residential neighborhood, and a little bit of a mixed-use corridor. Very nice area with some decent playgrounds and other parks around it within walking distance, 5 minutes walk. And a little bit about the existing conditions. The playground today has this 7-foot high fence facing Adelphi Street. And it also has a higher fence facing what is an alleyway between the school and the playground. And this alleyway is used a lot by the school for the kids to access the playground. So most of the kids, there's a door here that will come into this multi-purpose area and get into the playground this way, or through the sidewalk on Adelphi and coming in. Most of the play area was located on the north side. There was a spray shower here, and the other areas are sort of more open and not a lot of things happening there. There's issues with the safety surface right now, so it creates a little bit of an ADA access issue, which will be fixed with this project. And the perimeter trees were sitting under or over permeable pavers or a cobble strip, which we're planning to remove. Some of the features, there's this really cute Trojan horse sculpture that we are salvaging and replacing and placing in the 2 to 5 kids play area. And the flagpole we are removing because there's a school flagpole right next to it. So, we didn't need a redundancy. Some of the existing conditions with the fence, 16 feet tall, some of the areas. This is the view from Adelphi and then Claremont Avenue, which is on the other side, on the east side. A little bit of a view of that alleyway and the entrance from the school in the middle, in between the two sites, right? So that's where most kids come in. Talking a little bit about the trees, there's a lot of like London plane trees and other species that, have grown here for a long time and we want to preserve. So we're using the canopy to enhance the shade, on the play elements. So preserve that shading element with the tree canopy, but also trying to place the play equipment in outside of the structural root zone for the trees. In terms of the engagement, I know that Parks, started early on with engaging with the community on this project. There were a series of virtual and online surveys and meeting with the students at PS 46 to understand what they wanted here. They were very vocal about it. In summary, adding more play elements, more diverse play elements for different age groups and something that's a little bit more active. It was very sort of like passive play that was there. In terms of the layout, something that came out of those conversations was the idea to having a flexible space that could be used potentially for an outdoor classroom area, as well as sort of community gathering within the playground as well. And so how do we approach the design of the playground, which then Yang will take you through the details. We use the perimeter trees, the existence of the trees as a way to say, okay, let's open up those planting beds that currently have cobbles, allow for the trees to grow better, have better space, less compression, but also then creating a planting buffer along the edge, lowering the fences along the edges for better visibility and access, creating then seating elements around that, and basically organizing everything around this orange pathway, which is, we're calling it a playful path, a playful sort of learning experience, which organizes the different zones for the playground. So, we wanted to maximize also the play opportunities there by using, this pathway as a playful elements that takes kids from different zones. So we have the 2 to 5 play area on the south, the 5 to 12 on the north, and a zone for swings that's mixed. And then at the center, we keep the spray element, shower element, or, do a new one right in the center, and then the outdoor classroom space right there. So you have the foyer space coming from Adelphi Street and the entrance or safe entrance from the multipurpose space for the school kids to arrive at that moment with sort of like a shared space here. I'm going to pass it on to Yang.
How do I click through this?
Yeah, just forward. Yeah.
And this is a laser. Hi, everyone. So this is our schematic plan. So you can see that playful path element going through all the spaces with painted games and play components to it, and with seating areas around the play areas to provide seating for the caregivers, and that central element of foyer and outdoor classroom. So going into detail about our play equipment. So this is the swing area. We're able to accommodate 5 bays of swing with 1 inclusive seat and like 5 to 12 and 2 to 5 swing areas. And we have provided play panels to serve as fences around the swing areas. These panels are to be accessed from exterior, and also you can see that all of these plays will be adjacent to the play paths that we're creating. So that's a holistic play experience we're creating. For the 5 to 12 play areas, we're trying to accommodate more climbing and fitness components. That's responding to the community input and their request of like including making it more challenging with the play equipment. For the 2 to 5 areas, because this is quite a limited space, we're trying to accommodate as much ground play and as much accessible play as possible. And also this is where we're relocating the salvaged Trojan horse, making a playful element in here. And in the middle, so we have proposed this spray shower area. So we propose a lot of fun fixtures to make this area as active and as fun as possible. For the palette of the paving surfaces, we're trying, because we want to highlight the play equipments, making them fun. We're generally proposing a quite neutral palette for all the paving surfaces and play surfaces, only highlighting this play path that wraps around all the areas with a pumping color. So everything else is quite neutral, like a muted green and gray. And with existing fences, as you saw in the existing photos, the fences are pretty high with the 7-feet fence along the street, along Adelphi Street, and also 16-feet chain link fences next to the multi-purpose play area. So what we want to do is generally lowering the fences, creating more visibility and visual connections from the street and also from the play areas next to us. And the side furnishings, we're providing a lot of benches in the next to the play areas, also benches and seating opportunities in the middle, game tables in the foyer area, as well as trash bins, drinking fountains, bicycle racks on the streets. And we're also providing new lighting into in the playground with Flushing Meadows luminaire. And this is our palette, furnishing palette, benches, seating, furnitures. And with the planting palette, because we have a very established canopy layer already, so mainly we're putting up a palette of like shade tolerant mix that can do well with existing established canopy of the London Plains and red maples, and also providing, you know, wildlife value and pollinator value, seasonal interest with this palette. In terms of sustainability analysis, we are increasing the permeability, and also by opening up under the trees with the granite blocks, we're improving tree health and growing conditions. So there's a couple of views looking into the playground. So this is from the north seating area, looking into the 5 to 12 play, and in the back, the swing area, and with the play path in the front. This is sitting at the outdoor classroom, flexible seating area. You can have people gathering here, potentially having an outdoor class, and the spray shower in the background, and the 2 to 5 play. This is standing here in the middle between the 5 to 12 and the swing area with people playing on the play paths. So we're back at our schematic plan, and thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or comments?
Start. Thank you for the presentation. I have 2 questions. The first one is the space that's outside of the scope of work. You mentioned there was going to be a DEP project happening there. Do you know what is happening, and is that going to alter the way through which that space relates to the playground, or how kids use it to connect to the school?
No, usually majority of this project, the DEP project, it will be kind of a replacing kind. So what was there before is going to remain. So there are basketball courts and a little bit of like a running track painted there. You know, one of our ideas is that maybe once that is painted, it could potentially connect to our pathway in some way, at least I'd hint at it. But the levels and the grading will remain the same. So the access will be similar from the middle gate to where the we have the go sign in this plan.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. So understanding that, I have to say it's a great project. I think you guys have done a great job at laying out the spaces. So all the play areas for different uses are have their space, but they also do feel very well connected visually. It's a very open plan, and definitely the path, which I know where Yang got that idea from. The path definitely ties it together and has that extra playful element that makes the space very memorable. I also really like how you're using the play fence to separate the swings, because sometimes, you know, that is a missed opportunity. And I think you're really, you know, integrating as much play as possible by using that feature. So I think it's very successful. I'm really excited to see it. I just have one small suggestion or question, and it is that sitting area on the top right where you break the planting. Why is that? Why aren't those benches pushed in a little bit for a continuous planting strip?
The idea was to create an area where you can sort of like pull away from the play path if you're a parent and you have your kids come in and like you know you have your bags or something, that you have a little bit of space, and so that's why it's kind of pushed against the fence. But you know, I think we have explored other possibilities. Like we explored the idea of planting there, but maybe it is too small of a planting bed to maintain plants. So we went with the sort of all the way pushed against the fence. And we do have a little bench that's there on the front, which we could also do, which is sort of like a 4-foot fence bench without backs, I believe, right? And we can do one in the middle too if we want to sort of create a little bit more of a social sitting condition. But something that we're, you know, still
and
exploring.
also like because this area is actually put closer to the play area, because that area actually doesn't have fence. It's pretty open in the front. But here we do have, even though it's a low fence, it's a swing fence that's right in front of it. So we're looking to see how that space is able to maybe feel a little bit more generous. But we'll definitely look into it to see if we're able to put a planting buffer behind it.
Thank you.
So is the text meant to be, that's literally going to say play and go? Is that like a
That's still under development. Yeah,
but something along the lines of creating very playful sort of elements that kids can, you know, sort of like get hints of like movement and maybe jump or do something. So we also have this sort of painted play area right next to the bathroom, the restrooms, right outside, that we're still exploring the final graphics of it, but the idea would be that the text and the graphics that go with it are also very playful.
Yeah, I think it's nice straight, but it could also be more fun. Like jump could literally look like jump, or there's an old book by Chermaivan Geismar called Watching Words, where it's just kind of like childish sort of iterations of like how to make text, you know, look more fun. So, but it's in this kind of modernist language too. So you might check that out.
Cool.
Definitely.
Thank you. Yeah.
Do you have a comment, Eric?
Sorry. Yes, I agree with that. And I also think that perhaps you can consider in your paving in those play places as well, maybe have like a hopscotch thing if you want people to be activated by the, you know, the elements that are on the floor. I also think that maybe something to consider, I'm not sure if it's in this smaller child area or perhaps in the top right area with the swings, maybe around it, or maybe by those benches on the top right, set an area for baby carriages, you know, because that's always a difficult place to, it's cumbersome. And then you kind of want somewhere to, so it's away from stuff, but not really, you know, it could be at arm's length, but kind of away out of the sight of where you want to see your kids.
I just have one question in connection with the plant palette. If you could bring that up, I'm wondering, do you already have things like rhododendron and mountain laurel on site or not?
No, I don't think we have any ground cover layers on site right now. It's just existing trees in granite blocks.
Right. Oh, right. But those are not ground cover. They're
Shrubs.
Yeah.
Shrubs.
Right. The reason I'm asking is because in the city, the pH of the soil is often too high for those plants. So I would just check that. And you can swap that out for other things that can take a higher pH. In a site like this, I suspect it is too high.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
So,
And we are also going through some of the site investigations. There's a little bit, just some sort of geotechnical reports that are coming out now, so we'll know a little bit better about the soil. But I think that's a good suggestion.
Yeah,
I think.
definitely.
yeah, and you can, I mean, there are formerly analogous plants that flower that you can put there. It's just, those are beautiful, but I don't know that they'll survive.
They'll survive. Yeah, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, any last comments before I summarize? Okay, so again, we did not hear public testimony or vote on this project. It will come again for a vote, but this is not that time. The comments were that thinking about the integration with the DEP site in your next, and perhaps present it in the drawings so that we can see how that comes together. Looking at the soil conditions and the plant palette, thinking about the question of how the words on the ground are maybe like onomatopoetic, if we can say that. That's about how words appeared, like, and Manuel recommended the book Watching Words. And then finally, Mary's comment regarding just thinking about baby carriage storage. But, in summary, I agree with Isabel, and I think we all feel it's really lovely, playful, wonderful project and an excellent contribution for this community. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the feedback. Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, and our final committee item is the conceptual review of the reconstruction of 4 bridges over the Shore Belt Parkway in Brooklyn. As with the previous project, we will not hear public testimony or vote on this project. Items on our discussion may be included as conditions of the consent agenda moving forward for approval. Presenters, you can begin when ready.
How's it going, Commissioners? Should we get started?
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Good afternoon, Commissioners. It's weird. Normally I'm here during the morning. Nice to be an afternoon piece. We'll try to keep this piece quick. My name is Nick Bettinati. I'm Deputy Director and Liaison for DOT, Deputy Director of Urban Design. I'm joined by my colleague Sally from our Bridges Division, as well as the team from Hardesty in Hanover. And we're here to talk to you about an exciting project. It's 4 bridges as part of the Belt Parkway over various local streets. This is one of our first design build efforts. I know you all have had lots of conversations with DDC and other agencies. We're excited to be embarking on this. I'm going to turn it over pretty quickly to Sally to go through some of our process piece, where we're at, how we're hoping to engage you, and then we'll turn it over to the H&H team to actually go through the designs and some of where we're at. We are still pretty early in the process, and our design build process is a little bit different than the DDC one, so I'll let Sally speak to that. We're hoping to get your feedback at this point. We're before the RFP that's supposed to be going out. We're sort of right at the RFQ stage where we're soliciting teams to participate in this. So I think this is a great chance for us to get your early feedback and sort of talk through how this process will play out for us. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Sally, and we'll walk you through the first part of the presentation. So that advances, goes back.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
That's okay. Hi, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Nick. Good afternoon. My name's Sally Stolberg. I'm the project manager from City DOT for the Belt Parkway project. Nick gave a pretty good introduction. So this bridge crosses over Bedford Avenue, Nostrand Avenue, Sheepshead Bay Road, and Ocean Avenue in Brooklyn. So we're going to run through the design build process, and then I'm going to hand it over to our consultant team to give you a project overview, go through the scope of work, the roadway improvements, the landscape improvements, et cetera, some of the bridge aesthetics, the schedule, and the next steps. So Nick mentioned that we're doing this as a design build project. we're here to talk to you about how PDC is involved in that project. Primarily, PDC will help inform the final and the draft RFP, the requirements for the project components, and the preferred proposer in terms of what our specifics are for the preferred proposer as decided by the developed criteria. Our meetings we're planning on having very early on so that we can get those components identified in the earlier part of the process, and we'll shape the project requirements of the RFP, which also includes our required review cycles. So the goal here is to streamline the compliance checks as much as possible because we want to get everything into the RFP. Anything that comes after the RFP will likely result in delays, change orders, extra costs, etc. So this is just a little graphic to show how this process works. We're in preliminary design and procurement right now. They kind of mesh into each other. And then finally, we go into design build. So for preliminary design and procurement, that's where PDC will have the input and involvement. And then following that in the design build process, that's when the project team will ensure the compliance that we've discussed with the PDC requirements. So I'll hand it over to Silvio to talk through the project summary.
Thank you, everyone, for having us. My name is Silvio Garcia. I'm the project manager from Hardesty in Hanover. So a little bit of a project summary. The project will be designed as design build, as Sally mentioned. It's 100% funded, federal, city, and state. And one important tidbit on this project is that this segment of the parkway was included under the Belt Parkway Master Plan or the Presley Report in the early 2000s. And it established a lot of the architectural features for the corridor. Numerous bridges were reconstructed up and down the Belt Parkway with these features. And as a part of this project, we're trying to incorporate those features onto the job. So starting off with the location plan, we're located in the Sheepshead Bay area of Brooklyn. Kind of zooming in. So this in red is our project limits. Most of our reconstruction or all of our reconstruction is going to be happening between Brown Street over here and East 16th Street over here. So this is where we're going to have most of our work. Those four little quadrants are potential staging areas that we're actively discussing with Parks Department. We obviously have the four bridges, the Belt Parkway over Sheepshead Bay, Ocean Avenue, Bedford Avenue, and Nostrand Avenue. And there's going to be some minor milling and resurfacing just a little bit here for MPT purposes in order to be able to do the reconstruction. These are the four bridges and the local streets. So you have Sheepshead Bay Road. All of these local streets allow for traffic in the north-south direction, and they all have sidewalks as well. Then it's followed up with Ocean Avenue. In Ocean Avenue, you start to see these columns here on the sidewalk. They're a little bit of an obstruction for pedestrians going across. That's one of the items that DOT will be addressing as a part of this project. On Bedford Avenue, you have the same configuration. The difference is that here, you also have bicycle lanes going in the north-south direction. And then the last bridge we have is Nostrand Avenue Bridge. Allows 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. And once again, it has that column that we'll be addressing as a part of the project. In terms of how we got here or the project needs, the bridges were built in the 40s. There's been no major rehabilitation and they're exhibiting deterioration, as you can see in this picture. When it comes to the geometry, the lane widths are kind of narrow. They're non-standard. The shoulders are non-standard as well. They're less than a foot on average. And then you also have non-standard stopping sight distance. All this means is the distance that you're able to see in front of you when you're traveling at a certain amount of speed. And this segment of the Belt Parkway has crash rates that are above the state average, and it's attributed a little bit to that stopping sight distance. It's just one of the things we'll be addressing as a part of the job. In terms of the project milestones completed to date, we've met with Community Board 15 in October of 2021. That was when we were first starting on the project to let them know that we were going to be studying this corridor. In May of 2023 or May of this year, we met back with them again and we presented the alternative that we were going to proceed with. We also completed all the data collection, the survey, the traffic analysis, and also looking at the bridge conditions. We studied multiple project alternatives in the summer of 2022. And in the fall of 22, we had completed our environmental analysis and selected an alternative. This being an FHWA or a federally funded project, has New York State DOT oversight, and they're currently reviewing a lot of our materials, started very early this year. In terms of the main scope of work, so as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be reconstructing the corridor within this project limit to make sure we meet all the state and federal safety requirements and that we meet all the standards for the corridor. We're also going to be reconstructing or replacing the 4 bridges, the Sheepshead Bay Road, Ocean Avenue, Bedford, and Nostrand. As a part of the project, the drainage is going to be improved. The drainage on the Belt Parkway proper for this project limit is going to be reconstructed entirely. And we will have some landscape restoration and improvements within the embankment area, that area between the service road and the Belt Parkway. So this is a cross-section view. The section you see on the top is the existing, is about 80 feet out to out. Like I mentioned, very narrow lanes and narrow shoulders. The non-standard sight distance, which you can't really see in this section. And then the section below, that's our proposed. It's about 110 feet plus minus. You're going to have standard 12-foot lanes, standard shoulders on the outside and the inside. And you're also going to address that standard sight distance. All that is we're taking the profile and we're basically straightening it out so you could actually see further in front of you. In terms of bridge improvements, so we're replacing the 4 bridges. The idea is to replace it with what we call a single span bridge. There would be no obstruction between sidewalks. So those columns that you saw on the 3 bridges before would be removed, giving pedestrians an unobstructed, view underneath the bridge, number one, and also a pathway underneath the bridge. There's going to be new lighting under the bridge as well to make sure everything's lit to the proper standards of today's. And the aesthetics, which my colleague John is going to go over a little bit following, in the future slides, is to keep with the Belt Parkway character, and also takes a lot of the Presley report with some minor modifications, which we will go into now. In terms of the drainage improvements, as I mentioned, we will be reconstructing the drainage on the Belt Parkway to make sure it meets the latest standards. So a schematic here, this being the Belt Parkway, you're going to have water coming off the Belt Parkway into something we're calling a grass swale. From that grass swale or vegetated swale, as you can see here, it's going to go into a quality structure unit or a vortex unit that's going to clean the water. It's going to go to a detention tank. And the idea with this detention tank is to slow the flow of water into the existing system to make sure that it's not over capacity. This is a schematic, this being the Belt Parkway. You have your retaining wall. There's going to be a maintenance strip here to make sure that you could access both the wall and the swales. And it's, this is the grass swale here, this being the service road over here. And then if you look at underneath and the vortex and detention tank, this would be the bridge abutment. You would have your vortex chamber. As I mentioned before, water would be coming from the swale into this chamber, which would then feed into this tank that was put in this area to allow better landscaping on the side of the corridor. And from here, it would go into the city system. In terms of trees in the existing embankment area, you have a lot of trees. It's a mixture of native and invasive species over time. So these are just some general shots along the corridor. Sort of our vision for the landscaping. As you can see here, this shows the wider roadway. So part of the trees here would have to be removed to fit in the roadway. Then we're going to have the maintenance area to make sure we can maintain this swale and this retaining wall. And this is going to be a mixture of existing trees and new native trees. The idea is to use native sustainable plant species wherever applicable. And this is actually currently under review and coordination with New York City Parks Department. So we've met with them a couple of times and they're reviewing our conceptual design for the embankment areas. With that, I'm going to turn it over to John. He's going to go over the architectural.
Hi, my name is John Kevlon. I'm the project architect for this project at H&H. Let's see if I can. Yes. Oh, sorry. There we go. So what we're looking at here is a rendering from the Presley report. It shows the trapezoidal granite wing walls, an important design element for these structures. It creates a portal as people are, passing underneath the bridge, and also is the bookends for the bridge on either side. We think the granite material is a nice contrast to the concrete structure of the abutment wall and also the retaining walls that are very prominent for this part of the project. Another major design feature is the linear stepped concrete roadway barrier, which spans along the bridge. It also reinforces the horizontal nature of the bridge. There's some other elements that were included in the Presley report, which were these decorative steel brackets that hold the overhang of the roadway structure. And another prominent feature is the horizontal reveals that are along the abutment. So the Presley report also included some details that went into the type of ashlar pattern that were on the granite wing walls. Here it's a coarse ashlar pattern that aligns with the horizontal reveals of the abutment wall. There's a rusticated belt course that aligns with the edge of this roadway slab to provide continuity of the structures. And then there's the details for the stepped concrete barrier, which you could see over here. The geometry is very consistent with other projects that have been done in the recent past. Go to the next slide. So these were how some of the Presley master plan designs have been incorporated into recently completed projects. So on the bottom, you could see Ocean Parkway and Bay Ridge Avenue. These were examples where there was some kind of combination of existing granite walls and new bridges. You could see how some of the elements were incorporated with the horizontal reveals on the abutment wall. At Bay Ridge Parkway, you could see how this horizontal reveal on the barrier was continued on top of the granite walls. And then another successful project that we think is important to look at and is more consistent with our project is at Rockaway Parkway, where they have these trapezoidal granite features. They show the reveal of on the horizontal barrier up here. Something to note is they didn't include the decorative steel brackets. They're not needed for structural purpose, and we think that was very successful for this project. It allows the beam to be a lot more, sleek and contemporary with the structure that's being proposed. Something else I would like to mention is this metal railing on top of the concrete barrier. That was included in this project, but was removed in future projects at Bay Ridge Avenue. It doesn't meet highway safety standards, so that's something we're not going to be including in our project. So really what we're looking to do is to kind of create a cohesive design among this whole Belt Parkway corridor, and take the design from the Presley report and maybe make some refinements to it. So our details and how we've been moving forward is, we're not showing the decorative steel brackets. We're not showing the metal rail because of safety concerns. The granite trapezoidal wing wall, it still pops above the granite to kind of be more prominent. And because our retaining wall is a little bit more seen on this project, we're continuing the horizontal reveals from the abutment onto the retaining walls. So we studied 2 sites at a conceptual level. This is at Bedford Avenue, where we have the retention tanks underneath the bridge, and the abutment walls are a little bit further from the sidewalk. And we also overlaid the, conceptual landscaping. This is still under development with our landscape architects, but we think it's a very important part of the project and to see it as a whole. And then we also studied it at Nostrand Avenue, which is a much shorter span. So the proportions are different, but the design elements are still incorporated in a similar way. And also with the landscaping. So from here, we also took a look at the details that we would like to include in this project and make them directive drawings, meaning that the contractor has to follow these and can't deviate from them. So this starts to show some of the build upon the Presley reports and some of the enhancements that we've made with the horizontal reveals, showing all the details for the granite and removing the steel rail at the top. And some additional details of how we're making sure that all the the vertical reveals are kind of secondary to the horizontal ones. But we want to make sure that they all align throughout the project. So with that said, I'll hand it back over to Silvio to go through the schedule.
Thanks, John. And kind of following up on the discussion Sally had earlier, this is our anticipated project schedule. So right now, we have the design build RFQ was issued. City DOT has received from potential design bidders some interest and are actively looking into them. In December of 2023, we are anticipating getting the design approval or the design approval documents, as they say. It has all the environmental aspects in them. In January of 24, that's when the draft design build RFP is going to be issued to those firms that have been shortlisted as a part of the RFQ process, with February 2024 being the final design build RFP. Proposals being due back in May of next year, with notice to proceed in October of next year. And we superimposed the slide that Sally presented earlier with the schedule. And this is how we anticipate as of right now, obviously subject to change. So we submitted in October of this year a conceptual. We wanted to get some feedback, see if we were going in the right direction, or if there were some items that the committee would like to have tweaked. We are meeting now, and we would like to, if possible, submit our preliminary or final in December of this year, so that we could have some approval, so that when the RFP goes out, we would have that set. As John mentioned, some of these things are going to be directive, meaning that the contractor is going to have to provide this. This not going to be, for example, on indicative, it shows a concept, but he's able to kind of modify it. This is going to be almost like set in stone, where it's directive. And where it's critical for DOT is this, February date. After they send out what's called the final RFP, if there are to be any changes to that after that, there's some risks that, would entail extra cost, could entail some delays. So that's kind of why they wanted to bring this up at an early stage and see if we could work through the process together. And with that, I want to thank everybody for giving us the opportunity to go over the project. And if there's any questions.
Yeah, I'll just take a quick second. Just to also put this in context of DOT's larger efforts. This is obviously the first one of these out of the gate for us. And I think we've had some really productive conversations with staff. We're hoping to use this obviously to inform our process moving forward as well. So we're really interested in that feedback. I wanted to just hit again on that point of sort of the directive versus indicative design. I think this is places where, we have an opportunity working through this commission and through this process to sort of hone in on design details that we think are really important, ones that may have a really significant aesthetic impact, for example, or anything really. At the same time, we want to strike a balance with making sure the design builder has some flexibility to innovate and bring sort of their own expertise to it. And again, we're trying to build on some lessons learned. Obviously, unlike the DDC process, this team has brought this design to a stage and to a sort of a level of detail that the design builders are going to respond to, as opposed to sort of developing a requirements contract or like setting up performances and having the design builders come and bring this to an RFP. So there's those kinds of differences in this process too that we think are helpful and also gives us some opportunity. So with that, obviously very, very interested to hear your feedback and keep the conversation going.
Thank you, Nick and team, and just thank you for kind of prototyping this process with us. We appreciate that. And you know, just as DOT is learning how to do this, we are learning how we can be most helpful. So with that, I would ask if any of my fellow commissioners have comments. I have a few questions.
Yes, I have a question about the beams that are on the exterior. They're why it was decided to not have the flush covered on it, because I know that it's not included in these description, what the underneath of that looks like in terms of where the lighting is, et cetera. I know that we have an overall view like that, but there's no sort of detail of what is the spacing overhead when you're underneath that. Are there separate beams going across? And if so, if there's spacing in between, I can foresee a lot of sort of pigeons and birds and stuff like that. So what can we do to sort of with that anticipation, make sure that doesn't happen? Because I know that there's a large scale project in Queens, close to where I live, underneath the 7 train, where they've had to periodically try to support and fix that problem because there's no end of like pigeons like nesting up there. So that the lighting, I would love to have some more views of what that looks like at night in terms with the lighting on from either side. And also I have a question about the construction schedule on all of these in these 4 areas. Are they happening simultaneously? Are they being sort of timed out separately? And I would like to know what the pedestrian and traffic study would be for, you know, ways that that's going to affect the public, pedestrian and throughway traffic in those areas.
During construction specifically?
Yes.
All right, so to answer the first question, there are multiple girders going across, and the lighting would be in between those girders to make sure it's kind of tucked in so it won't pop out, but you space them out in a way that you get lighting that meets the standards for a sidewalk. In terms of the birds, there will be something called like bird protection that's going to be on the flanges. It's going to be a requirement so you don't get nesting. So that's going to be there to protect on that aspect. And then the last question was pedestrians during construction. So pedestrian access will always be maintained even during construction. There's going to be a sidewalk maintained so that pedestrians can cross. The project being longitudinal in nature and being that we're widening out, you will take almost like a slice and you'll be working on all of it at the same time for a stage, but you won't be necessarily on every single bridge at the same time, if that makes sense. On top, they'll always be working on the approaches between the bridges, but the bridges will be spaced out. And that's actually some studies have been made to make sure that we don't hinder vehicular and pedestrian flows.
I would suggest maybe perhaps including in your next presentation, like light studies of underneath, what that actually looks like, as well as the plan out of what it looks like during construction, as well as, you know, so we, you know, the public can sort of anticipate how they're gonna have to change the way they walk through or drive through there.
Of course, yeah.
I mean, as is typical with all of our construction projects, right? Like there'll be a lot of community engagement before the contractor's actually out there doing work. They'll explain what the changes are on a regular basis. So there's always that layer too, but definitely.
I have a couple of questions and observations. My first question is, can you describe these bridges that were built using the Presley report? How close are they to these? Like, does one see them sequentially? Is there a relationship if you're traveling through these spaces?
I think the closest one to this one may be Mill Basin. So you won't be able to see it directly from here, but they're spread all across up and down the corridor. So yeah, so all of the bridges that have been reconstructed within this corridor have used a similar, and it goes, I think Bay Ridge is like somewhere up here. It goes all the way from Bay Ridge all the way across to like Mill Basin. So it's widespread.
Okay, but you showed several photos of some of the ones that have been built. They all are treated differently. There isn't a consistent design vocabulary. Like some seem to have the trapezoidal granite abutment wall, some seem to have more of a granite cladding.
So if I go back, I'll show you and I'll explain, because on some of these we were we were actually involved. Oh, let me see. So for example, this one here is Bay Ridge. And when we did this bridge, the abutment, it wasn't a bridge replacement. It was just this portion was replaced. So some of this was there and that character was left in place. On these two, these were replacements like ours, Rockaway. So for Rockaway, this whole thing was rebuilt. So that's where that stone was put in.
And there wasn't any stone there before you added that as part of this reconstruction?
Believe so, but I don't recall off the top of
The reason I'm asking is that I see how the Bay Ridge one has a more historical character. It's more of a continuous wall. You kind of see the weathering on the stone. And it is evocative of some of the other parkways that we have outside of New York City, where you do have all of these stone bridges and they have a very unique character. These are all pretty new. And I find it a little bit at odds to be adding a stone wing wall that's evocative of a certain time and a certain era to something that's new. And my question to you is, if there isn't any historical significance, or if these didn't exist and we're just trying to tie them into the vocabulary of something that is old, right? Is that the proper approach? Or could we think of a new aesthetic that perhaps favors the pedestrian experience a little bit more, diverse the budget there? I know budgets are always tight. And I wonder if rather than doing a wing wall that only as a driver you're going to experience, that may get completely obscured by vegetation, which by the way, I think everything you're doing with the stormwater is great and very progressive. Can we add some of those other progressive thoughts more towards the pedestrian experience in terms of the treatment of the concrete under the bridge, the treatment of the lighting? Community boards consistently always have concerns over some of the lighting on the DOT underpasses because it really favors the vehicular optics as opposed to the pedestrian optics. Is there a way that we could incorporate some of that energy and budget into improving those experiences and making them contemporary and have a sustainability narrative in the same way as you're doing with the stormwater, and maybe less so on the architecture, which to me, just by not having a historical tie-in, feels unnecessary?
Okay.
Tanvi, who would like to also opine?
Yeah, I just wanted to check in on that because our understanding was that the Presley report basically set a precedent for us. And so we were following that along. And so that had some of these architectural features included in it. So we're trying to keep to that. So if that's not a requirement, we can certainly have that conversation, but I think that's where we were coming from. In terms of the lighting and all of that, of course, we're going to develop that further. We're at conceptual level at this point. And similarly for the staging, I just wanted to kind of clarify. Part of the whole beauty of design build is to get the contractors and designers thinking together on how best to do the construction and get it finished in the most efficient manner. So, we can take a guess at how they might do it, and we might have an idea of how they would likely proceed. But what we would do is put in the requirements of, sidewalk of X feet must be maintained at all times. 3 lanes of traffic must be maintained in each direction, and so on. So the requirements would be listed that way. And then the contractors would propose how best they think they can meet those requirements. So I just wanted to clarify that on that previous question.
So I think maybe as a next step, we can come back to you all with a little bit more from the Presley report, just so you see where that context is coming from. And as Tanvi is saying, I don't think that we are wedded to the granite trapezoidal piece by any means, right? I think that it's a discussion for this body obviously to weigh in on, but we can at least give you that full context because this was obviously a quick presentation. So
on that point, I think the context would help, but I think the point is really just if we're shifting as a city to bringing more safety and more like dignity and uplifting and people who are traveling by bicycle or walking, can we design a bridge? Because this is a new bridge, right? In a different era when the original, what year was the Presley report?
2006.
Right. Okay. So, but it's looking back.
right?
Correct. Yeah.
Right, right.
Mhm.
I mean, when the original kind of form was created, it was about this experience of driving on a parkway, right? And we still want our drivers to experience beauty and to understand the time that they're driving in and the tectonics of a particular structure. But maybe we can come up with something, and perhaps that's just like text in the RFP, right? Because it would just ask, but something where we take whatever we would have to spend on that granite facade treatment and update it for today so that it speaks to modes of transport today that we want to honor as it with equal emphasis as cars. That's really the point.
Yeah, no, and it's well taken. Again, I think that's definitely a direction that we can move in, and we can continue to have that conversation with staff and with you all about what form that takes. I will say there is the sort of ocean side of the Belt Parkway does have a lot of pedestrian amenities and park amenities, right? Like there is an aesthetic from that side that, there's maybe something to respond to, but again, the point is well taken, and I think we can.
That's a really interesting point. I mean, maybe that would be something to consider or to ask the respondents to consider as one system, if that's how you see it.
Right.
It could be something to put in.
Yeah, and we obviously have been looking at lighting underneath structures. The agency in general is really paying close attention to L space, and we have tried to sort of increase the foot candle requirement, still making sure there's a uniformity there so that there's not dark spots and light spots. But that's another piece that as an agency, we've moved in a much better direction, I think.
Absolutely.
Compared to where we were when the Presley report came out, for example.
Yeah.
I just wanted to follow up on what Isabel said too. I also had the same reaction. For me, it feels like it's a sign rather than like something structural or, functional, I think. And so, I think thinking of like, what the cost of it is it worth it to construct this sign? I think identity is important and kind of like a continuity, but, is this kind of like the response, or is this the way to kind of like, manifest that?
Yeah.
And in a way you could use the same materials in a different way if you want to retain like a material kind of connection between the bridges along the span of the parkway. I had a question about the drainage system. You spoke about the swales and the retention basin beneath the road.
Yeah.
I wonder if will that be consistent throughout the system, or is it just for these four, or where is that going?
That's gonna be consistent for this stretch of the corridor.
Okay.
Yeah, so this stretch of the corridor. For this area, it's gonna be consistent for that area. So all the drainage in this area will have those systems.
And so if I'm on a bike or walking along the parkway, will I see that? Or I was like a little bit struggling to understand where all the elements, how they come together. If you could walk us through that.
If you're, let's say, this being the service road.
Yeah.
If you were here, you would have this buffer of trees and interstory trees, and then the swale is here.
Okay, so even from the road or from the service road, the swale is really like in between. It's not going to be something that people occupy or even really see very much.
No, it's not going to be.
Okay, and then the swale drains into the retention basin. How exactly?
So the swale will have some pipes underneath for the water that goes to, and it's also going to have some overflow, and that's going to makes its way to the vortex. It's graded so that the water goes towards the vortex.
I see, and then in the vortex.
Yes, it's like a water body structure.
Oh, that's the brand. Got it. I'm like
sorry.
picturing a vortex. Okay, vortex, got it. So the vortex then percolates back to groundwater, or it ends up in the combined sewer system?
It ends up in the combined sewer system. Right.
But it goes from the vortex to a retention chamber first, but again, that's slow.
So it's really slowing it down, but it's not like, it's not replenishing groundwater, it's not filtering, it's just holding.
No, the swale would by essence have some filtering effect.
Yeah, right.
It's like a combination. The swale would filter some of it, and then what's left would end up in this vortex chamber.
Was there any consideration of systems that might, because what you're describing is going to just send the entire volume into the combined sewer system, but slower, correct?
Actually, if I might clarify a little bit, So when the rainwater comes down at not a very high pace, it would go to the swale and then would percolate down into the groundwater. It's only if it is really heavy rain that it cannot get through that way. Then it has, it's too much water to go anywhere. So that's when it goes through the detention
Got it.
system, vortex and all of that.
So then what you're saying is that the swale itself will be somewhat porous for low volume storm events. Is that right?
Right.
So then where will that, if, can we go back to the section that shows where the swale is? Okay, so is there concern about the foundations or if it's meant to percolate right there? Has that been kind of considered? Because I didn't understand that. I thought swale was sending it all into the, it was intended, I mean, obviously the plants will slow it down, but I understood it was going into the vortex.
Yeah, so it is considered, and also you have the water table, which is also considered, right? So the water table is not, that deep, is only 4 foot difference between the swale and so there's no effect on the foundations per se.
Got it. Okay. So last question on this, and you probably have questions on this, but my last question is, could it, would it be, and if I'm off base because I don't understand the engineering, that's fine. But my question is like, is there a possibility, given that groundwater is so near, to have instead of sending it all into the combined sewer system, to let some of it percolate down by a different kind of design? Like, wouldn't that be better?
Yeah, I mean, we've looked into various
Did you?
different types of like bioretention basins, and this was the mechanism that best fit the project in discussion with DEP and DEC. So this is how we ended up here.
Because
it's a lot of technical in terms of infiltration rates on the site. So for the infiltration rate on this site, this was the best system that we could use for.
because it would be too slow, too fast.
Because the infiltration rate would not be acceptable for some of the other system types.
I see. And it would be not acceptable because it would be too slow.
It would be too
fast?
slow.
Too slow. Got it. Okay, well, I'm not a hydrologist, but I think it's worth considering whether all this water needs to go in the combined sewer system because it's going to be a lot of overland flow.
Well, and to Tanya's point, obviously the vegetated swell will catch and.
Yeah, right, yeah.
Like a good chunk of storms. I mean,
I guess that's true.
frequency
Yeah.
that we're getting with heavier rainings is not, I'm not trying to dismiss the point.
No, I hear you. Yeah.
Going to be infiltration.
Yeah.
And Nick, and that was my point. I mean, there's many ways to do this, and obviously you have started having those conversations. And I don't know to what extent the RFP is going to be very prescriptive about this, or let it be more of an open-ended item for the bidder. But there's a giant difference between putting short grasses as shown here or lawn, which is really what the photo is, versus plants that actually do absorb the water or filter the water. That affects the infiltration rate. There's also a difference between putting 6 inches of gravel and then soil versus just soil. And then there's also the soil itself. Soil can actually have a lot of sand and percolate faster, or be more organic based and percolate slower. So what I really like about this project is that it could be a great demonstration of how to handle stormwater in a way that people can see. People can see this new landscape along the Bell Parkway, and there can be a narrative from the city that starts speaking about how to mitigate floods, especially after the crazy floods we just had a couple of weeks ago. So I would just want to push this idea a little bit further and see if either it's yourselves or through the bidders, ensure there are specialists on the team that can really work with all the variables, the type of vegetation, the type of soil, the type of blue-green infrastructure, those tanks. I mean, all of those things collectively can yield a huge return. And I would see this as a great opportunity for the city to experiment with this.
Yeah, I agree with that too. And I understand that you've made your calculations. And again, neither of us is a hydrologist, but like maybe the respondents may have a vision that we don't know. We've made it very prescriptive here
in some ways, I guess what we're suggesting and in this prototyping of the design build process is that perhaps you give them kind of outcome specifications, like this much water needs to move this quickly in this amount of time, but how they do it, you know, and give them a sense of values, like the less that goes into the combined sewer system, the better, kind of, and see what they come up with. I mean, you could always just revert to this if necessary, but I think it's interesting to see because people, you know, can surprise you.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, to Sylvia's earlier point, there is a layer of DEP and DEC review here that
Yeah.
maybe strict some of our options and some of
Sure,
the
fair enough,
metrics
yeah.
that we have to meet, but we'll obviously come back and again, work with staff on getting to that level of specificity in the RFP. or
Okay.
the right level.
Any other comments or questions? I'll quickly summarize. So there was this question of the infiltration rate on this well and the differences soil or vegetation types would make. And also just being open to different kinds of detailing of how drainage happens, which may or may not be possible. We understand that. Thinking about how the granite wall could be similarly more of a loose specification so that designers could think about what do I want to do with that material and how can I bring it up to 2024 where it's speaking about not just people in cars but people who use other modes of transport. And then finally Mary raised the question of we'd like to see more views of the lighting next time as well as yes, exactly. And but I mean I think to me, this is like a very exciting example of where we can go to be delivering things more efficiently. And I think what we're doing here is sort of calibrating how much is too much or how much is too little, right? When we send it into the RFP. So I applaud the kind of immense work that already went into thinking this. And thank you.
Thank you.
The only other point, sorry, I just wanted to add is knowing what's indicative versus directive in subsequent presentations. Or even in staff would be really helpful so we can all understand where there will still be room for us to opine versus a compliance check.
Sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you. And with that.